p.m. We'll start by reading our mission statement aloud. The mission of Monument Academy is to provide a challenging, content-rich academic program offered within establishing a solid foundation of knowledge. Monument Academy emphasizes excellence, respect, responsibility, character, and exemplary citizenship. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. That will lead us into our roll call. Mrs. Belial is excused, absent. Mr. Carley. Here. Mrs. Clinton.
Here.
Mrs. Toyota.
Here.
Mr. Ross. Here. And Mike Graham is here. We're on to proceed forward with our agenda. This evening, board, do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda tonight? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as distributed by unanimous consent. No comments? Okay. Next item on the agenda is our citizen comments, which we have none. That will lead us into our school spotlight, and tonight I will yield to Mr. Carley.
All right, so we try to nominate somebody within our community and Monument Academy who goes above and beyond to be a strong part of Monument Academy. And this month we would like to recognize our first valedictorian in quite some time. We haven't had a graduating class in quite some time, and Scott Cole Hayes is the first within this building, so we definitely wanted to recognize him. Scott can't be here tonight; he's actually at the senior sunset, so Mr. Chatter will be accepting for him. But proud of Scott and being the first valedictorian within the first graduating class we've had in quite some time.
Mr. Carley, next item on the agenda will be our consent agenda. For the minutes from April 11th and April 25th have been distributed to you electronically. Are there any corrections or minutes to be read aloud? There are none. The minutes are approved as distributed by unanimous consent. That will lead us into our reports of admin and committees. We'll start tonight with Mr. Machado, who will be delivering our executive.
I have a letter here from Ms. McClellan. MA Board of Directors and School Community. I apologize for my absence tonight. I'm excited about my daughter's upcoming wedding and look forward to closing out the school year when I return. As we approach the end, opportunity to highlight some of the school year and outline the strategic efforts that will guide our school into the 24th school year. The time that I have served as your executive director has been one of achievements and thoughtful planning to ensure that Monument Academy after year. Over the past year, our leadership team has been dedicated to developing and executing our robust strategic plan. This initiative has focused on enhancing our academic programs, community engagement, financial discipline, and operational efficiency. We've held several team meetings with staff and stakeholders to ensure that our strategic objectives are aligned with our long-term vision and immediate needs of our students and teachers. This collaborative process has set a solid foundation for the next steps in our growth. Our teams have worked diligently to execute this first-year strategies and establish momentum for future work. The summary of this year's success will be presented in the final quarter school dashboard, which will be presented in an upcoming board meeting with Mr. Machado, who will lead the outcomes of the strategic plan presentation. In alignment with our strategic goals, tonight you are presented with next year's school budget. This comprehensive financial plan supports our priorities, including the budget discipline needed to ensure we are bond compliant, ensure our staff and students are a priority, and enhance school experiences. I want to acknowledge the long hours and hard work that Glenn Gustafson, Jake Dykes, Krista Belli, and the rest of the leadership team have done to ensure the success of a balanced budget presentation. Transition to a new executive director, Mr. Machado. Mr. Machado and I have started this transition and initiated a process that will help with the needed understanding of the past school year's operational nuances. The effort is designed to support and equip Mr. Pinchado with the knowledge and relationships necessary to lead with confidence and confidence. Finally, I wish to express my deepest gratitude for your support during my tenure as Executive Director. It has been a privilege to serve in this capacity and witnessing the profound impact of our collective efforts on the lives of our students and staff. I've been inspired and strengthened by the dedication of the board members, school leadership, staff, and numerous parents during my tenure. I'm certain that under the stewardship of the MA board and leadership, the school will continue to flourish. Let's continue to uphold the values and the vision that make Monument Academy an exceptional place for learning and growth. I am grateful for the opportunity to have led this exceptional community. Faithfully yours, Kim McClellan. With that, some of the reports are coming in from the administration team. A lot of testing that's been taking place. So in second grade, they were doing the testing, which is for the gifted and talented identification. Elementary also participated in the DIBELS testing end of year, which gives us an update on where students are with their literacy levels. NWA has been taken through kindergarten all the way up through 8th grade, in 3 testing areas in the elementary, and then also science in the middle school and in 5th grade. We're looking forward to seeing those results. High school finished up this past month with PSA in the middle of AP testing. Elementary had a very successful assessment day that included some of those tests, and then now we're moving. We're excited to hear the results from the gala that Mr. Nikes will be sharing that information with us. Elementary had a wonderful core knowledge day with a great attendance. The administration development for the staff in the coming year. At the East Campus, or some of the events for this past month was the homeschool fair, introducing the Monument Academy homeschool program to new families. We had a kindergarten signing day. We had the middle school sneak peek where the 5th graders came up to see what middle school. It's Your Future Night with Miss Emily Davis providing freshmen and juniors, future freshmen and future seniors of what high school is going to look like in this monumental next year. And then the planning of summer events and to keep in touch with our families for the upcoming year. Also, a big shout out to Mr. Engelman with his drama performance. The students did a wonderful job, and we had a great.
Thank you, Mr. Machado. Board, any questions? All right. Next up, we have our CFO, Mr. Gustafson.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have a Finance Committee meeting scheduled for next Wednesday, at which time we'll review the April financial statements. I have lots of stuff on your agenda tonight, so it feels like most of the agenda is mine. We'll adopt hopefully the fiscal year 24-25 budget. We have 2 contract awards, and we have 2 financial policies. So I'll talk to all that. And things continue to run well in the finance office, and the biggest initiative we're tackling is rolling out the online purchasing in our SDS financial system, which we just began to work on that. So things are going well.
Sure. It'll lead us into our board committee reports. I'll start with our Highway 105 report. As I've stated over the last several meetings, everything is on the road in front of the West Campus. So by the time we come back for the 24-25 fiscal school year, we'll have both roads opened up, and it should alleviate a lot of the traffic congestion that we're seeing now. So that is my report. Next, we have curriculum. Mrs. Clinton.
Discussion centered around the continued use of SAAC and math for the next school year and how to best implement grade level configurations to properly support students at all learning levels. We also discussed possible adjustments to the curriculum policy following the first run of the curriculum review process in February. Emily and I will work on providing those recommended red lines to the government. A project was introduced to determine where CCAM content is being utilized to support various units. And finally, we briefly discussed high school academics and the need to determine the best process for reviewing curriculum and programming. At this time,
Thank you, Mrs. Clinton. Next, we have our SAAC West, Mr. Ross.
Yes, sir. We met last week and had a principal report, Mr. Walker, it's about some NWEA results. Mr. I'm allowed to share the official results. Dibbles are complete. And then, of course, PTO is always busy doing a lot of great stuff, so I'll give you some. You can still order EduKits for the 24-25 school year 17. Used uniform sale will be held June 3rd, Parent Square. Next general PTO meeting will be held, was today, this morning. So, and the Give Back event this month is at Lolly's Ice Cream on the 22nd. A couple other things. Skate City's offering the MA Community Summer card for $5. Check Parent Square. Switchbacks are offering 20% off, or Give Back event on June 1st, which will be super fun. Other than that, we discussed the end of the year survey and rising the recommendation letters for later. Brian, you're going to read that right now. Right now? Okay. So, Jalinda Diger, who is the chair of SAAC West, wrote this recommendation letter to the board. I'll read what she has to say. Members of the board of directors, executive director, principals, and assistant. Our West Campus SAAC conducted our annual end of the year, surprised by the low number of responses given. From the last 3 years, we averaged about 140 responses to each end of year survey. This year, we received 37. This sample size is not adequate enough to warrant too much attention, but it did raise a lot of questions about the nature and purpose of our SAAC and the benefit of MA SAACs collaborating in a more one MA fashion. This year's West Campus SAAC's letter of recommendation to you all will therefore be a proposal of a plan to improve Monument Academy School Accountability Advisory. Firstly, the SAAC bylaws need to be reviewed. Some simple changes need to be made, such as the title Chief Operating Officer to Executive Director. While making those simple changes, we would also like for the purpose of the SAAC to be more clearly defined and applicable to Monument Academy having dual campuses. We want to ensure that we, as a subcommittee to the board of directors, are working most effectively in our current circumstances, which were different 4 years ago when the bylaws were last revised. In order to achieve this goal, we propose that a subcommittee be formed composed of at least the executive director, both campuses SAAC chairs, and at least one board of director, principal and/or assistant principals would be optimal as well, in order to review bylaws and more clearly define operating procedures, create a SAAC schedule for the 24-25 school year, and develop a new member onboarding plan to include mentorship, resource review, and answer any questions new SAAC members might have. We would also recommend creating a visual of a point of contact tree, which would help direct MA community members' voices to the person that will hear and understand them the clearest. We want our community to confidently that Monument Academy partners with children. While we are working on visuals for best paths of communication, we would recommend that training out to teachers and parents on how to best utilize Parent Square. By fine-tuning our effective means of communication, we should ensure that more people who want to be heard feel confident that their point of view is being considered by the person. Finally, we highly recommend that both campuses work together under the one MA umbrella to ensure consistency in how SAAC is run at Monument Academy. This change should be reflected in the membership of each SAAC committee. Next week, our inaugural senior class will parade through the halls at West Campus, reminiscent of the elementary core knowledge parades, and then through the halls of East Campus. What an inspirational image for our younger learners to see. Those students are graduating from my school. How cool. 3 of those students are lifers, a term coined by the senior class for the students who started at MA in kindergarten and are now graduating from MA high school. Let's continue to work together as one MA to create a first-choice school that educates more lifers and graduating classes that are maxed out in pupil count. Basically, we would like to see more unity and clarity between the two SAAC. So we need Mr. Vinchato's help with that.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Next, we have SAAC East, Mrs. Clinton. Governance will be to you, Mrs. Wood.
Yes, the governance committee met on May 2nd. We have reviewed and now recommend two finance policies, which will be coming forward later in the agenda.
So the finance committee met on April 17th. Not a ton to report on tonight, but very optimistic on how we're going to finish this year. As previously reported, there were some concerning times, and Glenn and Laura really guided us through those times strategically. And currently, we are still missing around 4 revenues that is in the year, so we're excited to see how that plays out.
Sir, buildings and facilities. Okay. RDC, Mr. Carter or Mrs. Clinton?
We will just defer to Mr. Dykes and his presentation later in the meeting.
From me on the HR subcommittee. So that will lead us into board discussion action items. The first item on the agenda tonight is the board of directors election update.
David, I want to say, first of all, thank you to everyone who helped participate. Kendra, Lena, Mrs. McClellan, very helpful part of that, and to our 5 candidates who participated, kind of went through here, and answered a lot of questions, spent a lot of time preparing and participating just to serve our kids well. So I just want to say thank you to all of them. We do have 2 clear winners, which I'll announce, and love to give a round of applause. Okay, so the first winner is our very own Lindsay Clinton. Congratulations. And our second one, unfortunately, wasn't able to be here today, but she is Jalinda Diker. Let's give her a round of applause. They will start their term July 1st, 3-year term this year.
Next item on the agenda will be fiscal year 23-24 fundraising and resource development update.
Test. All right. Thank you, Mr. President. First, we're going to start with the gala. Give you guys the update on that. I'd like to kick off acknowledging our incredible sponsors. We have Integrity Bay, Precision Aircraft Management, Rocky Mountain Pediatric Dentistry, Pikes Peak Allergy and Asthma, Olson Heating and Plumbing, and Freedom Car Wash. And boundless generosity are the driving force behind to elevate Monument Academy to new heights. The number of everybody's wanting to know is how did we do? It was fantastic. Every year that we've been doing this gala, we continue to grow. This year, our gala, Light the Way for Our Maine, raised over $134,000 for Monument Academy. The support just isn't making waves, it's creating a tidal wave for Monument Academy. We're going to be able to spark several opportunities across Monument Academy, from educational programs to facility improvements, and of course into our growing athletic department. Personally, I am greatly privileged to be part of such a special community. This is my second full year here at Monument Academy, and it's been a blessing. The outpouring support towards Monument Academy is unmatched. I've worked at several other schools, and by far, Monument Academy blows people out of the water. A couple special thank yous. I'd like to highlight Amanda Peters. She has definitely been my right hand, and her love and dedication towards Monument Academy we're blessed to have her. She has a special set of skills that makes events like the Way for MA a huge success. taking on the challenge of securing our amazing silent auction items and our gift baskets. We also did some online bidding this year. We did it early, so there was definitely the competition on that end, and it was a huge success. If you weren't there, there will be a picture of the event, and I encourage everyone to come next year. That's to be determined where, but it will be in April. And so that's the gala. And then just overall fundraising and extra funds for the year. Like I said, the gala is our biggest fundraiser, as shown in the pie graph for you guys here. But we do have our links fund that is still there and will always be there. We did fairly well with that as well. Not as well as last year, but we had another source of income with our facility rentals that we exponentially. I probably get 3 to 5 phone calls a week for people wanting to use our space, which I think is great because it shows the community who we are, what we're about, and we're able to build those relationships, and then they are now then promoting Monument Academy out there as well. Lastly, we do have School Store. That is a fundraiser that's kind of, it's fun for the kids because they send out, probably all have kind of an email or two about that. It's a way to promote Monument Academy and to promote our teachers that do an amazing job with our students. So this year, on your notes there, or the number that's in there, that's physical money that the school has received. But in the last 2 years alone, our community here and abroad that have been donating to teachers in gift card form, they've gotten over $50,000 in 2 years. So that is a huge support for our teachers. They're able to use their gift cards to buy supplies for their classroom, or some of the 4th and 5th graders, they buy a science kit for each kid, so they're able to like dig out the dinosaur bone. And so it's been a huge success. So all together for the year so far, this does include money that will be coming in the month of June with facility rentals that I've already secured with a Lego camp, and we have camp convention coming in June. We also have a summer camp through Monuments Best that's going to be coming. So through that, for the entire year, we're over $213,000. I want to say that I'm very Kendra helping me promote some of these events, the staff, the principals jumping on board. It's definitely a team effort. We overachieved on our goal. Our goal was $200,000, which was at times, like Craig, you said, you mentioned, like, there's some rough waters at the beginning, but perseverance, right? It's a good trait to have. Is all the work that we have done this year. And if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
I will commend you guys as well. That's terrific. Understanding your goal is 200. So thank you, everyone, for the work that you put in on this. Next item on the agenda will be our personnel action report, new job descriptions. I believe Mrs. Pelly will be presenting on this tonight.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Got it.
Good evening, everybody. I'm glad to see staff members here as well tonight, so appreciate everybody coming. Today, we're just going to go over real fast the changes in personnel. We have the top corner of that. We've got the people listed that are not returning this year. We do have 14 not returning. 3 of those people are actually, it's because of retirement. 1 is going into retirement, and 2 of them are at their 110 days, and so they can't work anymore without being utilized by 1 employee is a result of budget constraints, but as you can see in the board report, we have a 9 and the number 1 reason that people are leaving was listed as personal. I didn't cry, and the second reason was because they were leaving the profession entirely. So those numbers, I think, are really strong. I think it speaks to what we're doing and the great changes that we're making and stability that we're putting in place. We do have Anna Miller and Jennifer Helga that accepted the positions as middle school English and Latin teacher. We did offer a position to the custodian today, so we're waiting to hear if that goes through. That custodian will be here at the East Campus full-time. As you can see, we do have the newly proposed job description for the athletic director and dean assistant. The reasons behind that and what I received from Stuka and from Mr. Stinson is that at this point, they're going to utilize Ms. Davis, Emily Davis, as support for the middle school mental health. So she's going to take on some of the roles as counselor in the middle school, which she's already doing, and she feels like it fits into exactly what her wheelhouse is. She doesn't feel like it's any sort of extra work, and Ms. Stuka and Mr. Stinson were confident that it would not compromise students. Where they were concerned with Mr. Stinson being the dean and the athletic director and the amount of work that entails, because he'll be taking over student affairs and discipline and supporting the secondary principal, we knew that he was going to be strapped for time with organizing and planning athletic events, set up, finding referees, you name it. The job description is there for you, so the rationale is there. The financial gains in that is that we are saving money. We had allotted $50,000 for a middle school counselor, and with that, the athletic director, dean assistant is going to be right around 39. So it is a financial gain for us, and it's also support in the administration that I think is much needed. Once we go down, the need to hire positions are listed. Right now, we are really hoping for some math and technology applicants. So if you know anybody, let them know we're hiring. The other positions we are just replacing. The only other newly position that we interviewed for is the registrar assistant, and we opened those up and we conducted internal interviews this week, and we're going to make a decision on that next week. We did get 3 applicants internally, and so we were eager and excited to interview them. And then, of course, the secondary principal. And so the way in which we designed the secondary principal interview is we set up, I sent out a Google form asking anyone who was interested, if they wanted to be on the hiring committee, they just had to submit the Google form, and I requested that they provide some of the reasons and also provide a question. We had 4 parents who filled out the Google form, and we had 6 staff members. With those numbers, it made sense to me to just invite all of them. So we have 2 different interview teams, and what we're going to do is we're going to have the candidates come in. Mr. Vinchattel and I are going to narrow it down to 3 people, and then bring the candidates in and allow them to interview with both of the teams, and then do deliberation afterward to ultimately make that decision. So that's the plan with that interview. As you can see, the changes in positions, we are switching some things around in the elementary more so than the secondary. We are moving a TA into a teacher position, and then we have our 3rd grade teacher going to full-time kinder is going to switch to part-time kinder. Specialist and tech teacher is now going to be the tech assistant support. That's also going from a 1.0 to a 0.6. And then we've got 3rd grade moving to 1st, 2nd to 3rd, 4th to 3rd, and 3rd to 4th. Shifts in the teachers and where they're teaching grade level wise, but for the most part, we have wonderful retention rate in the elementary. Lastly, we have Laura Poland, who is switching roles from the registrar into the finance director position, and then of course Mr. Vinchattel is changing from the middle school principal, and he's stepping into our executive director position. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Melly. In our last board meeting, we had asked you to speak with legal counsel in regard to the restructuring internal position allocation. Do you want to speak to some of that so we can share that with the community?
Definitely. So I contacted Mr. Miller, our attorney. He informed me that we operate a little bit differently than the way in which a district school would operate. So because we have, I'd like to say we operate like a government entity and also like a small business. And so when it comes to our restructuring and our employment, whenever we have to cut positions because of budgets, that is considered a reduction in force. And so there were budget constraints that led us to making some really hard decisions. With that, we talked about internal postings, external postings, and when you have to. So anytime it is a newly created position, you have to at least post internally, but you can post externally. And so with the registrar assistant role, for instance, it was a newly created position, which is why we opened it up to internal candidates first. If we weren't going to get any internal candidates that we thought would be best for the position, then we were going to open it up to the public. As far as the secondary principal goes, the way that worked is it kind of boiled down, and the way in which Mr. Miller explained it to me is it fits to the budget, and the position of principal already exists. Because we are switching it from 2 people down to 1, we needed to open it up to the public. And so that is what we did. We actually ended up with 5 applicants so far. And then lastly, anytime there is a advancement, so if we are training someone up or because of a reduction in force, we are giving an opportunity for a person to assume another role, we are most certainly at liberty to do that. And so that would be in regards to the registrar role moving into the finance director. We were eliminating the other registrar position, which was opening up a lot of money for all intents and purposes, so that we weren't hiring a finance director and keeping 2 registrars. So with that, the position was terminated, not the person. And then the advancement was in the fact that she was already being trained, and so everything about that was done legally, and we got the A-OK from our attorney.
Thank you, Ms. Belli. Board, any questions? Understanding that both of these are actually the 3 job descriptions are part of the organizational chart, we'll take action on that a little bit later on the agenda. We don't need to take action on the new job descriptions. That will lead us to our contract awards. We will start with our HVAC contract on campus. Ready on this?
All right, thank you again. All right, so we do have a little backstory about the HVAC units. They are the original units to the West Campus. They range from 15 to 17 years old, and they are either at end of life or fastly approaching. So we went and got a proposal for our 2, myself and Mr. Stager, everybody knows him as Chuck, or Mr. Chuck. We took a look at what our 2 most as you know, think about when you have say you have a furnace in your house, there comes a point when you can continue to repair or you can try to go new. And you still find the parts. So with that, we reached out to 3 companies. We reached out to, we have a service agreement with. We also reached out to Haynes, who we have worked with in the past. And then we did find a 3rd company. Their company is a Cool Breeze, but they are a subcontractor for Eagle Heating and AC as well. So with that, with all the information that we got, our recommendation is Haynes due to the fact of their equipment, their integration systems, their willingness to train us. We get 4 hours of training with their proposal. So that'll give myself and Chuck a good understanding of how that unit works. Some of the reasons why we are choosing them over the others, the Cool Breeze, the units that they recommended upon research, those units would be great for a 7-Eleven, meaning size, meaning one of their units could probably heat about 3 of our classrooms. So although it is significantly cheaper, it would not be a wise investment on our end because they don't have the capability that we'd be looking for. Those, especially in the winter, those would be running 24/7 trying to heat our building. Or in the summer, or in the fall, when we need the air conditioning. Longs, they gave us their quote. It was, I had a great conversation with them. They wanted to use a certain type of unit similar to what we have here at this campus. What the cost is, and being in operations, the best value is Haynes due to the cost of that. it's fine. And in speaking with Haynes, they said you cannot go wrong. You're not going to have any more less problems with training. Now, some of the questions that come arise is we do have a service agreement with our HVAC system with Longs. And speaking with them, they still can provide the service for maintenance. We change the filters, we just got to let them know what the model of our unit is. The first year, Haynes is debating whether or not to do the service themselves as part of the agreement because it does come with a 1-year warranty in labor. So that's a specific that I can work out between the two companies. Either way, it's not going to cost us anything. The other nice thing about Haynes is they sent this over for us regarding opportunities to possibly save money for the future. Because it's not just that we're going to replace these 2 and then forget about the other 7. Haynes has reached out saying there's 3 people that I'm going to be in contact with that can help with what would the cost be, whether that is having a payment plan with them so we can get all the units done at a better price and we're just making the payment over time. That's a discussion I'll be having with Glenn and McCollum as well. Does it make financial sense? A couple of highlights is what would the cost be moving forward? Take any of those prices that are in front of you and you can add anywhere from 10 to 20% just for the units. So each year that we wait, it's going to go up 10 to 20%. And that could change based on inflation, that can change on supply and demand. The information that I was given just yesterday was Freon. We all have Freon. You have Freon in your fridges at home. If you want to buy a new unit, until next year, because they're changing the specs on Freon. So the units that we are getting this year are going to be fine. If we have any issues with Freon on the 7 units that are old, it's going to cost us anywhere from 15 to 25% more if we had to replace the Freon. I'll just read it. He said the new Freon R45B is going to drive the price up of all units. That's a government mandate, so that's not necessarily a company specific, so it doesn't matter who we go with that jump in. So with that, like I said, our recommendation is Haynes, that it is in your board packet. The professionalism, they know their workings, they know how to do the integrations, and that is one thing, like I said, when it came to a cool breeze quotes. 1, the units are probably not sufficient for our campus. 2, we would still have to hire a third party, which would be Haynes or Longs, to come in and do the integration of the units. So with that, I will take any questions you may have regarding HVAC.
Thank you, Mr. Dykes. So I do have a question. This proposal is for 2 units.
Correct.
Less than what we were budgeting, discussing at our last board meeting.
That is correct.
Yes, sir. My second question is, what's the life expectancy on these particular units?
15 to 25 years.
Okay. And then warranty?
Yep, so we get a 1-year warranty, parts and labor, through both, if we go with Haynes, like our recommendation, we get 1 year with parts and then 1 year with labor.
Were they willing to give us any type of break on that 10 to 15% if we sign a contract knowing that we're going to need 10 over the capital improvement of probably 5 years?
Yes, so in that discussion with them, when it says we're going to have more, they gave me their project plan for moving forward. They are willing, we're not necessarily going to get a discount, but they have different financial options of, hey, you're going to buy 7 more units. They're not going to lock in a price right now because of inflation. We don't know what the future is going to bring. They gave me some ballpark numbers as to what it would cost. But with their finance options, similar as if you're going to, hey, I'm going to try to buy a house, they're going to say, well, you could use this type of program. One's called CPACE, and then they gave me 2 other financial advisors that they work with to see what possible grants or additional funding we can get because Monument Academy is a nonprofit. So discount specifically, no, but other options to be able to find more money to help us pay, yes.
Glenn, is maybe not, obviously not this proposed budget, but the following year to try to reduce some of the premiums that we are going to pay in later years, it would be nice if we could earmark additional capital improvement funding for that, because we're talking $150,000 to $200,000 just based on inflation increases over potentially the next 5 years.
Now, another pro is, okay, our units right now are 15 to 17 years old. So any unit that we put in there our utility bill, using Data Wrangler, and we're trying to figure out these spikes, is going to come down. So we're going to see some savings. We'll be able to give you better numbers once the units are installed to say, hey, yeah, look, we're not peaking at 220 amps, right? We're peaking at like 104 or 105.
And we're not fixing the old ones.
And we're not fixing the old one. Yeah, we have. Those two are, they're end of life for sure.
Well, I appreciate you providing the 3 RFPs and understanding the value proposition with the Haynes. We need to take action tonight
Right.
for the 2
Correct.
at this current time, with the intent, understanding that the other 8 will be with Haynes over the next several years.
Yeah, we would still probably go back and rebid as well, just to make sure to always check, because yes, right now Haynes is who we're leaning for this year. If something changed where Longs was, or another company would come in, that's great. But we are going to be, the fact that we're going to a train unit on these 2, per our recommendation, we would make them all the same. We would say, we want train. We're not going to have 7 different types of HVAC brands up there. We're going to stick with train.
Right, yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep.
You would not want to do that.
And Mr. President, I would like to, at some point, talk to the board about a work session to discuss a 5-year capital plan, 5 or 10-year capital plan, so we could weave all these components in. We have the parking lot, we have the HVAC units, we have this campus. So at some point, I'd love to have that opportunity with the board to talk about that.
That would be good to do this summer. When we all have the time to carve that meeting out. All right, Mr. Dykes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Board, is there any other questions? Somebody want to make a motion? I'm happy to do that.
I can go ahead and make a motion, and I'll just note that in the proposal, if you scroll down to the Haynes contract, there looks like there might have been one little typo, so I'm going to read the dollar amount from the contract itself. So I recommend that we move forward with the Haynes Mechanical System contract in the amount of $160,323.
Second.
Mr. Carley has seconded that motion. Board, is there any further discussion on said motion? Hearing none, Mr. Carley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Clinton?
Aye.
Mrs. Hoyda?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ryan Graham votes aye. That motion carries. The next item on the agenda will be the MA Employee Benefits Plan. We yield to Mr. Gustafson.
Broker is Hub. We're currently insured on a health insurance plan with Cigna. We are continuing to face high claims costs as a result of the actual services and procedures that our staff need. And our broker Hub came to us early in the year and said, you're looking at a 10 to 15% increase in healthcare. At that point, we started examining different options. We surveyed staff. We had a great response. We had 64 people that responded to that. Those results are in your board packet. And we started pursuing an alternative arrangement to the traditional insurance model. You only have to look at the stock exchange to look at how United Healthcare, Aetna, Kaiser Permanente, et cetera, how many billions of dollars they make each year, to see the challenge of healthcare. And so we wanted to investigate a different option, and we think we have found a great solution for the staff of Monument Academy. And at this point, Krista, who is our HR director, has done a tremendous amount of work pulling the logistics in, but I want to be clear that I was heavily involved in the beginning to try to get this going. As most of you know, I managed a $30 million insurance plan at School District 11 prior to my retirement, and I wanted to bring that expertise here to look at alternative arrangements that could best serve our staff, our board, and our community. So with that, I'll turn it over to Krista.
Thank you, Mr. Gustafson. I want to start by speaking to the staff, and I want to let everyone know that when I send emails, and I'm desperate to get information out to people because I want to give them an opportunity to be able to ask questions, I know sometimes that I send them and my sincerity and my passion is sometimes lost in translation of being very direct. So I want everyone to know that there is a lot of emotion because there's a lot in this for me as well as an employee. With that, I am grateful that you're giving us an opportunity to present this, and I am grateful that we have representatives from Peak and we have Mr. Dygert, or Dr. Dygert, here to also speak to this and provide some clarity. The information that we're sending out there, no, that's okay. The information that we're putting out there is so that people have the clarity to make an informed opinion and to make informed choices and decisions, and also to be able to direct what type of questions you want to ask for further clarity. And so that's a really big deal. As Mr. Jefferson said, we currently use Cigna. Employee premiums, school premiums, deductibles, copays, and maximum out-of-pockets have risen dramatically. With that, I want to give everybody an understanding of what each employee on the tiered system pays out in their monthly deductible premiums out of their paycheck a year. So currently, with the plan that we have, an employee only with a $770 contribution from the employer doesn't pay anything out of their, nothing is deducted from their check for their premiums. For an employee and spouse, the yearly rate is $8,016.36. For an employee with children, it is $6,720.36. An employee with family pays the yearly premium deduction contribution of $18,888.36. And those are the total amounts on a yearly basis that are taken from an employee's check. With the proposed renewal plan that Cigna presented to us, with the higher interest that they proposed it with, we had changed, due to budget constraints, we had shifted the employer contribution down to $700, which is being proposed as well. With the $700 contribution, the employee only will pay $1,664.52 a year. Employee plus their spouse will pay $11,567.88 a year. Employee with kids will pay $10,068.12 with the newly proposed Cigna plan, and the employee with family will pay $24,148.56. So that total amount will be deducted from employees' checks over a year. With the Redirect Health Plan proposal and a $700 contribution from the employer, the employee only will pay $0 a year. Employee plus a spouse will pay $1,440 a year. Employee plus a child or children will pay $1,800 flat. An employee plus family will pay $6,000 a year. So those numbers really did speak to us, and they were a big part of what we gathered from the survey, which one of the things that we did gather from the survey is that people wanted higher salaries. And in essence, this is a pay raise. It's more money in their pocket. That being said, it wasn't all about dollars. And the dollars were just something that we know are concrete, and numbers are easy to see. We also took into perspective what the perks were to this type of a health plan setup. And it brings medical services closer to a patient. It lowers that monthly premium deductions from the staff's paycheck. It creates a competitive market for the patient. It removes the large insurance companies acting as a middle party. And lastly, it acts as a healthcare of choice option. When we go down through our evaluation, so we started these deliberations and these negotiations in January with Cigna through our broker hub. We were not getting the numbers we wanted to get, and so we also started to play with an idea of a non-traditional setup. I actually met with Dr. Diger last year for the 22-23 school year, and we just decided that that kind of change, that big change, it wasn't what was best for staff at that time. It was better to take the percentage increase in the premiums and keep things status quo to make sure that staff knew it's okay, we're gonna calm the waters. With that, Mr. Vinchattel, Mr. Gustafson, Ms. Poland, and I formed an admin deliberation team. And so after January, Mr. Gustafson kind of took the lead on it, talking with negotiations and kind of figuring all the numbers. And then he started to dive into what is peak benefits, what is redirect health, and how does it work? With that, we did not send requests for proposals for the health plan to several different vendors. Bottom line, RFGs would send MA into awkward conversations about negligible differences between the different large corporations and the different large insurance agencies. So we were also facing a time constraint. And one of the things that we were hoping was to present this to the board sooner and to get it out sooner, but we weren't going to present something that was not complete and that we didn't have enough of a grasp on, that we were able to actually relay the information and provide you guys information that you needed to make informed decisions about your own health care. Lastly, we also knew that the board had many other things on their plate, and so here we are. So one of the reasons that we wanted to make sure that everybody had a voice was in the staff surveys. Those went out in February. There was a reminder 4 times for those, so we wanted to make sure that it was out there, it was in front of you, and that you knew that there was a voice in this. And the survey results did play into the way in which we deliberated. The 4 different informational meetings that we have set up, I'm not presenting those. We're going to have Mr. Vitt and Mr. Perry present directly, because by removing that big conglomerate middleman, we actually have a point of contact that we can speak to directly, and staff will have access to them ongoing. The Padlet was important when I saw the emails running in, and I'm very grateful that we had staff members who contributed and put questions onto that Padlet, because it's going to make what comes out of this meeting tonight far more fruitful. And it's going to allow us to speak to some of the concerns that you have directly. Before I turn this over to Mr. Gustafson, and he's going to speak to the financials specifically and the percentages and whatnot, and then he'll toss it over to Mr. Perry and Mr. Vitt. I wanted to address one concern that came up on the staff Padlet, and it was about a conflict of interest. And so I anticipated that could be a concern that came up, so I went ahead and I looked into the board statutes and bylaws. And so under section 5.3, approval of conflicting interest transactions, the corporation may enter into a conflicting interest transaction provided either. And the first is I, the material facts as to the responsible person's relationship or interest as to the conflicting interest transactions are disclosed or are known to the board of directors or to the committee of the board of directors that authorizes, approves, or ratifies the conflicting interest transaction, and the board or committee in good faith authorizes, approves, or ratifies the conflicting interest transaction by the affirmative vote of a majority of the disinterested directors on the board or committee, even though the disinterested directors are less than a quorum, or II, the conflicting interest transaction is fair as to the corporation. And then in the bylaw section 3.2a, it states spouses of directors are not permitted to be employed by the school. I went ahead and I chalked that out and I called Mr. Miller just to make sure that we were all on the up and up. And his response was, regardless of whether or not she is going to be on the board, because at that time I wasn't sure, but that was a concern that came up on the Padlet. He said, Ms. Steiger wouldn't have to recuse herself because she wouldn't be a part of this vote, because her active duty would not start until July 1st, and the negotiations all happened prior to her running. So that being said, in future instances, if we do choose to go this route, It would be in the best interest of the school and the integrity of the board that Ms. Steigert recuse herself from making any sort of a vote or contribution to anything regarding insurance or providers.
Yes, that is correct. She is not on the board right now. She has not been sworn in, so she would have no action to this effect. Moving forward, to your point, yes, we would absolutely have her recuse herself from any type of action taken moving forward in the event that the board proceeds forward tonight.
Yep. And I apologize, one last thing. Mr. Vinchattel, Mr. Gustafson, Ms. Poland, and I actually sat down, and one of the things that we would like to put into action is an advisory insurance committee that is comprised of staff members. So we have representatives from our staff that are able to sit in. So when we're doing those negotiations and we're looking through all those options, we're able to get input and hear from you. You know, how do you see it? We'd like to put something together actually this year. I know summer's coming and I don't expect anybody to come during the summer, but it would be lovely to have some staff representatives for something like that.
Board members, we know that change is hard, especially when we're talking about people's health care. We're very sensitive to the fact that people have primary care physicians, they have specialists, they have prescriptions that are very near and dear to their heart and their health. And so we took this leap knowing that this was going to be a difficult decision. I've been through many, many changes at District 11 in healthcare, but we were always challenged by the fact that these giant insurance companies were making tons of money off of our employees and off the school district. We think this is a different plan that's going to bring better health care. I think you're going to love what you hear from these guys. You're going to see that it's a great opportunity. We've even talked to them about having a clinic on staff certain times in each building a month that can provide services, prescriptions for low impact health care. I think you're going to see that this is going to be much better, more proactive health care. And so with that, you've heard enough from the administration. I'd like to ask the team to come up and talk about how this works, what's covered, and why employees should not be afraid of this. It's not an insurance company, it's different, but they should not be afraid of this.
Thank you, Ms. Pelly and Mr. Gustafson for the introduction, and thank you for the chance to come talk to you today. And thanks for everybody who is participating in this meeting, especially the ones that are participating based on this specific topic. My name is Brian Perry, and I own Peak Benefits. We are a nationally recognized, award-winning benefits firm. We are firmly committed to educating leaders, organizational leaders, and business leaders about the problems in healthcare and how they're affecting not only your budgets, your bottom lines, but your employees' health and your employees' pocketbooks. All right. We recently won an award as a top 50 health plan in the country. It was recognized as the best health plan in the Western United States, and that is Bennett School District. Okay? That school district has not made a plan change or a budget change since 2017. In 2022, that school district let me know that they were paying the same amount in health care that they did in 2008. That school district, the employees virtually pay nothing. Other than maybe an emergency room visit, they pay for none of their health care. No deductibles, no co-insurance, no co-pays, no out-of-pocket cost. That means, again, that every employee is getting a raise every year. Because as everybody else's plans increase by 6 to 12%, their plans have not increased, as I said, since 2017. What we see when we look at what we proposed is a plan that will lower the premiums for employees and for Monument Academy, freeing up dollars for important things. By the way, I will stop now. I was an educator. Okay, I was a high school lacrosse coach for 21 years. I remember in 2008 when they walked in and said your budget went from 11 coaches to 2 at $2,000 a coach. All right, now we're going to talk about some of the numbers and what they mean, but that really happened. And I know that the savings that we're going to produce are going to lead to a better educational experience for your kids and more money in teachers' pockets. All right, so again, far lower out-of-pocket costs. I've attached this kind of summary. You see that with Redirect Health and with the HRA and with Pinnacle Healthcare, employees will have virtually no out-of-pocket costs, save for some copay or some co-insurance in certain situations and for emergency rooms. What that means is that not only, as Ms. Pelly said, they're getting a raise because less will come out of their paycheck, but that means that every employee that has a claim will save money. Right now, your deductibles are $5,000 and $6,000. Now, the average teacher in Colorado makes $57,000. I don't know what the average here is at Monument Academy, but I know that when a teacher has a claim on a $5,000 deductible plan, that's 10% of their take-home pay at least. Okay, and I can assure you that the medical industrial complex, if you will, is trying to grab as much of those dollars as they possibly can. And so our plan solves for that. Now, we're going to have more predictable renewals. Renewals have been about 2.5% with Redirect, and Redirect is a step. It's a step towards building an even better plan like we've done at Byers and like we've done at Bennett and like we hope to do at school districts and many, many businesses around the state, but like we hope to do at this school district at Monument. More effective health care. The addition of Pinnacle means that when your employees go see the doctor, and they'll have choice, they can continue to see the doctors that they've traditionally seen, but what they'll start to learn is that, gee, I go to the doctor and I see the doctor for 7.5 minutes. In 7.5 minutes, they have time to refer me to higher cost care, or they have time to write me a prescription, period. The sad part is that the doctors are trained to do 80 to 90% of medicine the day they graduate from medical school. A primary care physician is trained to do 80 to 90% of everything we need. They don't do it. They don't have time because the economics of healthcare and the insurance reimbursement fee-for-service model means that they have 7.5 minutes with their clients. 7.5 minutes is not enough time to provide good health care. So the employees at Monument Academy are going to have virtually unlimited health care through Pinnacle. That means if they want to go on Tuesday, they'll go on Tuesday. If they want to go on Wednesday, they can go on Wednesday. They want to go on Thursday, and guess what? It's all free. That's a huge improvement in the quality of care that they're going to be getting because of the Pinnacle, the subscription-based model that Pinnacle employs. And we'll dig into all this much, much more as we go through the education process with your teachers and your staff, but understanding, that's going to be a huge advantage in recruiting and retaining employees and keeping employees happy and keeping them healthy. A path to a more sustainable healthcare future. Like I said, this is a strategic step that we're taking. We will be building a plan that works even better. So that will be part of what we talk about in the future. You can see the coverages there and what that means when we talk about the HRA and we talk about the Pinnacle DPC along with Redirect Health. But essentially what Redirect Health does at its essence is it prearranges pricing. Outside of a network contract, which is an illusionary, fictitious game that's quickly becoming illegal, really. Outside of the network discount, they will reach out to your provider and work out a market-based price, a free market price. That price will be based on Medicare and several different benchmarks, local medical costs, what the costs are for what services you might be getting. They'll work out a price, and then they will pay that doctor immediately as soon as that service is provided. The doctor actually will probably make a little bit more than what they would make with Cigna. And there's a lot of mechanics there that I don't need to get into, but they will get paid not only a little bit more, but a little bit faster. And so because they're working on a free market price and negotiating, instead of just accepting a network contract, we're going to get much better pricing, and that's reflected in our premiums. Let's see here, other points. In emergency rooms, okay, when we talk about emergency, what happens in an emergency or a stroke or a, whatever is unplanned? Guess what? Go to the nearest emergency room. There's plenty of things in our plan that will protect you from overbilling from a typical emergency room. There's plenty of protections in that area. So we never want to ask an employee who's, having chest pains or feeling dizzy to stop and get on a nap. Go to the nearest emergency room or call an ambulance, either one. So that choice will always be there. The understanding that in healthcare, though, 90% of the claims that we have, or the claims that we pay, are planned in advance. Your doctor's appointment is planned. Your surgeries, for the most part, are planned. Your knee replacements, your whatever, 90% of all medicine is planned, and so we can get ahead of that, use that planning to get ahead of the pricing that our plan will pay. Right? We had a bunch of, I think, very interesting questions that I might want to address now, or depending on how the board feels about the time. I don't want to go on too long, but just the most important point is, as Ms. Pelley pointed out, we are not an insurance sales organization. Okay, insurance sales organizations bring insurance to the problem. This isn't an insurance problem. This is a supply chain problem. What we pay for goods and services in our healthcare is the problem. Okay, we had a question. Well, we looked up Redirect, and it doesn't even look like an insurance company. It's more of a plan manager. The components of Redirect are the exact same components that Cigna has. Cigna has actually 3 components that matter inside of their plan. They've got a stop-loss company, separate company. They've got a PBM, or pharmaceutical benefit manager, which is called Express Scripts, and they have an administrator band, which is called Cigna Administration. Redirect has Redirect Administration, a stop-loss company called Statesman, and a PBM called Jevity. Cigna is a plan manager, just like Redirect. It's just been packaged a little differently. So from a service level, this is, I think, what's really important from the employees need to understand. This is not a situation like you've seen in the past where you're going to get an open enrollment guide. Somebody who looks like me, dressed in a cheap suit, is going to talk to you about insurance. That's not it. Okay, we're going to go through the meetings tomorrow that I think will be very educational, and then expect to hear from us once a month at least, through educational videos, through webinars, through text, through all kinds of touch points. Most important touch point is our phone number, because you will be hearing from Lance or someone from our team every time there's something that you don't understand. We are the angel on your shoulder to take you through this. You're not going through it alone like you might have been with that $6,000 deductible plan you were on. We will have us with you. So I'm not sure if questions are appropriate or if we should turn it over to John Dykert. Oh, okay, yeah, let me. These are the questions that came in today through the portal. What was it called again? Padlet. Okay, we hadn't used that before, so that was an interesting experience getting to know that, but it was very effective. We had, I think, by the end of the day, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And I'll give you copies of this as well. What if our current PCP doesn't accept this kind of insurance? What is the name of the new insurance? Well, we got to the name, but there's a few questions like that, so I kind of consolidated them into one. If your PCP doesn't accept this kind of insurance, what Redirect does is they work with them so that they will. Now, without getting into the numbers, the PCP, the primary care doctors on your Cigna plan, will make about 120, from about 105 to 120% of Medicare, sometimes a little less. We're going to be at 140% of Medicare. We have yet to run in, and I think we have 4 clients on Redirect right now, we have yet to run in a situation where a primary care doctor did not take Redirect. It's never been a problem. So I'm not worried about that. I'm also would encourage everybody, and we'll talk about this tomorrow, to explore Pinnacle. Explore Pinnacle. So that addresses that. I think the document submitted to the board for approval of this plan very clearly states that things not covered or included with this proposed plan is critical illness. That's not true, it's covered. So I looked through the document, couldn't find anything on critical illness. We've had plenty of critically ill people on this, and it's covered. So we'll deal with that. Dialysis. Dialysis is covered on the Care Plus plan. So as you're making your choices, you'll have two choices, a lower cost care plan or a higher cost Care Plus plan, in which case, if you have dialysis on your future, for sure the Care Plus plan would be for you. Still significantly less expensive than either of the Cigna plans. Organ transplant. The organ transplants are not covered under this plan. In the case of an organ transplant, that would be considered a loss of coverage. So Redirect has carved that out of their plan. In case we need an organ transplant, since it's a loss of coverage, the qualifying event kicks in, and we can immediately get that person a plan that will cover it through the individual market. Okay, so in the case of an organ transplant, and we haven't had one yet, but we've seen them take place. It's really not hard. Okay, we can also run those premiums through the HRA and take care of that for the employee. So the employee should not be touched by any disruption if they need an organ transplant. Fertility support. Well, so fertility support was not covered under Cigna, and it's also not covered under Redirect. Right? Specialty care, that somebody had said that it's not covered, it's absolutely covered. Okay, and we'll deal with all this in our meetings tomorrow, but I want to make that very clear. How are we doing for time? Is this okay? I don't want to talk too much.
Mr. Perry, you take as much time as you need.
Great,
I'll sit
okay.
here as long as you would like.
Great, because I can talk for hours about this stuff. So I am unfamiliar with an HRA, so I have several questions, basically asking about the HRA. Well, I don't want to sum up the whole thing, but the whole question. But the HRA, an HRA stands for Health Reimbursement Agreement or Health Reimbursement Arrangement. It's not a health reimbursement account. What we're doing is we are self-funding. Monument Academy is self-funding for claims that occur under the deductible that's built in at Redirect. Redirect offers one plan, $2,000 deductible plan. We don't want our employees to come up with $2,000 because the average American has less than $400 in their savings account. So we want you to get the care that you need without having to worry about, gee, do I have enough money to cover this if I have a $2,000 deductible? The HRA steps in, and there'll be two processes, and it kind of depends on your provider. One process is you can get the bill and send it to our HRA company, and they will reimburse the provider directly. The other process is you will come out of pocket for that charge, and then send in your paperwork, EOB or receipt, and you will be reimbursed.
Mr. Perry?
Yes, sir.
I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to be clear for the audience. The HRA is funded by the school,
Right.
not the employee.
Right, and I'm sorry.
So you're reimbursing your cost from the school. It's not money you put into the account as an employee.
That's very well said. I said self-funded. To me, that covered it, but I talk this vernacular all the time. It's funded by the school. So what the school is essentially saying is we're going to dramatically, by $6,000, $5,000, dramatically reduce the amount of money that comes out of your pocket if you have a claim. And that's what the tool of the HRA is built for, and we'll touch on that with far more detail tomorrow. Let's see here. Is Redirect Health actually insurance? I kind of addressed that. The website states they have health care plans. They state they are a program manager. Again, Cigna, whether you know it or not, is a program manager. And maybe we can touch on that more tomorrow, but they are structured exactly the same way Cigna is. Some of the prescription drug costs with even just the everyday plan are $50 to $100 copays. Okay? The copays are, I think, less than what you've got with Cigna, especially if you're on the HSA plan. And there's a ton of ways, which we'll talk about, to get those drugs outside of paying through a copay. And so we'll work with you on that so that you can utilize resources that are available to get those drugs significantly cheaper than the copays.
Or you can use your HRA.
Exactly. So, yeah, we may, and that's, I think we decided not to, and that can change maybe. What I would recommend if we go down the path of prescription drugs in the HRA is to allow for reimbursement for GoodRx through the HRA. Probably not a copay situation, but again, we can make that decision. And the good news is, guess what? It's our plan, the HRA is ours, and so should we decide in September that we want to do something different with the HRA, we can do that because it's our plan. It's not Cigna's plan. Cigna's not telling us what to do. We can kind of cover it however we want. So if we feel like the need arises to make changes, we can certainly take a look at that. And I want to. That's one of the beautiful things about plans like this is that we own them. We own them. I don't understand what is happening with Pinnacle Care. Is this the only place you can receive primary care? What do they have to do with our health insurance? The truth is that Pinnacle has almost nothing to do with our health insurance. Almost nothing. Okay, Pinnacle's job is to give you great care. And then when you need something, they're going to be like-minded with Redirect to get you to the right places. Okay, now let me give you an example, and this is a true story, and we've probably seen it 6 times in the last 2 years. UC Health doctor, your UC Health primary care physician, in 7.5 minutes, they looked at you and said, oh, it looked like you hurt your knee, I'm going to send you to an MRI. They say, go see Tom at the front desk, and Tom will set you up with an MRI. And you walk up and set the appointment, and Tom refers you right into UC Health Hospital. The cost of that MRI at UC Health is going to be anywhere from $2,500 to $3,500, and we've seen it up to $4,500. What Tom didn't tell you, and what UC Health doesn't want you to know, is that just down the street there's an independent imaging facility where we could have got that for $450. And if you don't believe me, ask your doctor. $450 versus $4,500 means that there's $4,000 that the school overpaid for an MRI. That's 2 coaches. And I always think about that. $4,000 was I made $2,000 the year they cut all of our salaries. So that's 2 coaches that just got eliminated. Just because Tom sent you to the UC Health facility. Pinnacle, trust me, me and Dr. Dykert are very like-minded. We have very similar values. I know what they believe, and they know the independent imaging facilities where we can get things done without referring you into UC Health. By the way, UC Health and the hospitals own about 80% of the providers in the Front Range. Unfortunately, our providers have turned into sales agents for the hospitals. So when you go to Centura and you see your primary care doctor and it says Centura or UC Health, their job is to refer you into the hospital. They make more money the more they refer you into the hospital. Again, Pinnacle has no incentive to do that. And it goes to the point of the supply chain management, which we talked about earlier. When I put in my age, it tells me that everyday care is $145 a month. Somebody basically went to the website and tried to get their own quote to see what was going on. And I definitely appreciate how, stressful and, unnerving these kind of changes can be. We deal with it all the time. What I would say is the plan that they were looking at was not the plan that we're going to be putting in place here. So, we'll clear that up hopefully with this specific member tomorrow. But again, premiums and coverages will be addressed in the open enrollment meetings. I called Redirect Health today. They do not have my primary care physician listed in network for primary care, nor do they have my dermatology providers. Okay? They're not working through a network. Now, what I can promise you, and this is always a funny conversation, but the primary care doctor that you have and the dermatologist that you have both take money. Promise you. All doctors take money. And so all we're going to worry about with Redirect is, are they getting that doctor paid? And when they work out that price, it's usually far better than what we would have paid inside of an insurance plan. So those are kind of a summation. There was a couple others regarding the question that came in about the conflict of interest, and there was, I think that was about it from the insurance side. But I'm happy to open up for questions here, and go ahead.
Something that I know comes up, my husband's company, they, every year we have open enrollment, we never know what's going to change. And one of the things that's always unnerving about that is if you have pre-existing conditions. So I'm sure we have staff members with pre-existing conditions. So can you speak to that?
Yes.
And what that would mean
And
for them?
I think this is where Redirect really does a wonderful job, because as soon as we finish our open enrollment through our portal, we're going to get the list of names to Redirect. Redirect will be reaching out to members via text to get them to download their app. And they will have 30 days before the go-live time to ask members, what pre-existing conditions do you have? What drugs are you on? What surgeries do you expect? So that when we go live on July 1st, that is taken care of. The question, though, I think is there any exclusions on pre-existing conditions? And the one would be the transplants. And if we do find a transplant, we'll immediately start the process of carving that out and getting the right kind of plan in place.
Ms. Clinton, do you have other questions?
And this is maybe a question for Glenn or Krista, but just what percentage of our staff utilize the employer-provided benefits plans?
I think it's approximately a third, is that right?
And what would you say are the biggest changes then our staff would see between what they're used to and what you would be providing? Oftentimes, just that unknown is what's scary.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that's financially, personally, in terms of their healthcare and their providers, but what would they expect to see as the biggest changes?
Well, the biggest change, and I haven't run the math myself, but I can tell you that the last group we did this saved $4,500 per employee. And handed it back to the employee. So again, at $57,000 a year is what the average teacher makes. From a take-home pay standpoint, you're talking about close to 10% of their income that they got back, a 10% raise. That has nothing to do with the reduction in out-of-pocket costs, which again is another raise. And so what we'll be able to do here pretty soon as we get more data from Cigna moving towards the end of the year is should be able to track what our employees spent through those high deductible plans. What has the employee portion of our claims been? And it's going to be significant. We'll be able to show that will go away. So that's the good news. I wouldn't say it's a bad news thing, but it is a change, is that we are going to have to work with Redirect to plan our procedures. And that can be a little bit different. When I'm used to just going to see the doctor, now I have to get Redirect to approve that, or at least go through the process of paying for it before. It can be difficult. Now, that's not true at Pinnacle. At Pinnacle, they can go whenever they want. And, in working with Pinnacle, it's been same day or next day care 100% of the time. Yeah. and it's my, and I don't want to say my job because there is no commission, there's no incentive, there's no financial incentive to bring Pinnacle aboard. I just know how much better plans run, and I know much happier employees are when they utilize a DPC provider versus when they end up at the UC Health doctors. And so my strong belief and what we'll be pushing and trying to educate you is the multitude of reasons why this DPC model is better than the fee-for-service model that, in my opinion, is breaking this country. So.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. I want to be cognizant of the fact that we have a lot of staff and teachers here. With the board's permission, if there's no objections, I'd like to turn this over, if there are questions with those that are here tonight, to be able to ask. You're not required to, of course, but if you do have questions, it does not appear that there are any objections from the board in doing this. We would ask that just come up if you have questions based on what the presentation has yielded so far. Okay.
And I could sit down, and I hate to stand here, and I'm not blocking anybody, so please.
I actually do have a question. Do I need to go up there?
Yeah, it won't be heard otherwise
Yeah.
if it's not on. Unfortunately, Krista, what you just said, I don't think will be heard on the microphone or on the live stream because it has to be by the microphone, so.
Okay. I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this evening. I know many of us did not receive much of the information more than just a very quick, your paper here, as you will, with like your current Cigna out-of-pocket amounts versus your new redirect out-of-pocket amounts. And at first glance, I would have to say, sure, this looks really beneficial. And I have no, I do have personal experience with being diagnosed with a cancer diagnosis 4.5 years ago. And if this plan, the way I'm understanding it, was in place at that time, I would have had a lower deductible, but I would have been paying 20% out of my pocket after that. And my $350,000 plus dollar, 6.5, 7-month stent, I'd still be paying a ton of money on right now. The part that is difficult for us is we didn't have a lot of time to research this or evaluate it for ourselves. So that fear factor that comes with uncertainty, that comes with lack of clarity that we are all trying to receive, it makes it very difficult for staff members to feel like we do have a voice. Gosh, this is hard. To feel like we have that voice, to feel like we can come and say, hey, without jeopardizing anything that we have in the place right now, we want to have input, we want to have a say. We don't understand this type of program. It is brand new to many of us, if not all of us. I've never heard of a program that has been supported or structured in this way. So you're asking us to unravel everything that we've learned in a way to come alongside and be like, this sounds great, I'm right on it, it makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm sharing my lack of knowledge, and my first understanding and my first glance makes it feel like I would have been paying $70,000 or more towards something in the long run when I didn't. I mean, I maxed my deductible out in about a day and a half. But after I did that, that bill was paid. So there is credibility in that stance as well. So you're trying to give us a new structure, a new identity, a new way of looking at it without information that would support it, without information that would tell us and educate us. As educators, this is what we do. We need that information, but we need it ahead of time, not in what felt like the final hour. We were panicked today. We were rushing. What is happening? Is this being approved tonight? Do we have a say in this? And I know I'm not the only one that felt that way. My questions didn't make it on the the ballot thing, the little thing you made, because I just didn't have time before 3 o'clock to get them there. So I appreciate you addressing some of them. I still don't feel like I maybe have those answers. I hope over those next presentations that that could be clear, but that's how I feel.
I appreciate you stepping up and doing that and asking that question. Mr. Perry, are you good to speak to that?
Absolutely, absolutely, and thank you, because, you know, it is unfortunate, the timing, it's always unfortunate. One of the things that happens is, you know, the marketplace doesn't allow for a lot of time for change ever. It's always you know, here's your 15% renewal, we'll go back to work with Cigna, and we'll try and get them down because we've got a good relationship with the provider. And then by the time you get the final number, guess what? You know, it's late to go to market, even to make a switch to United or an Aetna or something that's more readily known. So that's always a tough situation, making these changes. You know, to your point about the education and what we've provided so far, you know, the open enrollment meetings are really crucial. And that's where we will dig into the nuts and bolts of everything going on. You know, one of the things that's really important to us is that, you know, this is not an open enrollment meeting where we're going to be in a gymnasium or an auditorium with 120, you know, members, and here's your open enrollment guide, and here's what to do with your dental insurance. Okay, we're very purposely doing 4 meetings, 2 on tomorrow, and then 2 on next week, so that we can break it down to about 20, hopefully 20 to 30 members per meeting. And the reason for that is that it lends itself to a discussion. It lends itself to not a here's what it is, but you know, let's talk about what you think, and let's talk about what you're hearing, and let's make sure that you understand and get your arms around what is going on, because it is important to know. You know, these are never really, no insurance plan should ever be just emailed out, ever. But we see that a lot with clients that we walk into, where, you know, the open enrollment meeting is, you know, here's your new benefits this year. Make your election by such and such. Okay, and that doesn't work, and it especially doesn't work when you're taking on an $18 trillion industry. Again, the healthcare industrial complex. There's no better way to put it. Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, it wouldn't be any kind of policy if we only paid the deductible. It is absolutely going to take care of a $1 million claim, a $2 million, whatever the high end is, it's there for that. Okay, so in the case of a cancer, you know, it's not just the deductible piece that's covered. It is the you know, the catastrophic piece, if you will. The more expensive claims are absolutely going to be covered. That wouldn't be any kind of plan that we would ever stand behind. And we've dealt with, you know, we've dealt with all kinds of claims. Multivisceral transplants, where they took 5 organs from one person and put 5 organs in another person. Okay, so we've dealt with that. We understand it. We understand the financing of it, and you know, that would never be something that we would ever advocate for. You know, cutting out just the sick people or leaving people with $70,000 worth of bills. That's not going to happen. Does that bring some peace of mind to you? And I should have addressed that right away.
I think so. I just know, as we all took our time today trying to just think through our individual circumstances, there are staff members with children who are diabetic. There are staff members who are diabetic. There are staff members who have had skin cancer. There are staff members who do not know what is coming next, but something always happens, and that's why you have insurance. And, you know, it was difficult to not have information that we could take and really have. The reason I'm here tonight is because I don't want the fear, I don't want the emotional play of it. I just simply want to understand what is factual, what is going to happen with this, how does this work? We didn't have that and there was the appearance of this is what we're adopting. It is completely brand new, and you've created fear with that by not giving stuff ahead of time.
I hear your feelings, and you're 100% right, 100% right. What I think the goal is to hopefully present this as a little bit of good news too. Because there's a lot of people that probably aren't here that are looking at it going, wow, I will come out with a lot less money. I will have more money in my paycheck, and I will have less deductibles, and I won't have to worry about, gee, if I go to see the doctor and he finds something, I've got a $5,000 deductible, how am I going to pay for it? So there's that balancing act too, right? I mean, we have to kind of, in all these changes, look at both sides of that equation. And your concerns are absolutely valid, and I hear them, and we will, we're going to work really hard tomorrow to keep educating, and we'll work really hard throughout this process, which is never ending really, because it's an endless game of educating and helping people be comfortable with what's going on. Thank you for that, again, for your question.
Are there any other questions, comments, concerns? Absolutely, ma'am.
So I just want to echo what Sandy said about kind of just feeling flustered and rushed with this decision. And we got kind of left to our own devices. And I went on the Better Business Bureau and looked up this company, and there were some very, very concerning reviews. It was not pretty, and it was very concerning. With a young teacher who has no capital, I can't pay anything out of pocket. There is no pocket. And so those reviews left on that very reputable website was super concerning. And I feel like there has been information given, and then it goes back and saying, well, that's not true. And then it goes right back to that back and forth with information. For example, the list of things that were not covered. That was pulled directly from the notes from this meeting that the staff and parents were given. So, yes, it was like a review. Yes. And so when you say like, oh, that's just not true, we're just going off of what we were given. And so it is very concerning to go with this back and forth. And it's not just a little thing. Like, I take health insurance very, very important to me. And so that back and forth information, yes, no, it makes it very, very cloudy for us, and it makes it hard to understand what is actually happening. For example, you said that you have never dealt with transplants with Redirect Health, and then a few moments ago, you said that you were talking about with multi-organ transplant. So it's like, well, you just said that it didn't happen, and now you're saying that you had multi-organ transplant. So that goes back to that confusion. And I have had amazing experience this year, has been rough with me for medical conditions. And UC Health has gone out of their way to support me and have spent way more than 7 minutes in a doctor's office supporting me and helping me financially the best way they can. So I don't quite support attacking them when that is not everyone's experience, and they have saved my life in multiple ways. So with all of this, it's very unclear, and to be frank, the Better Business reviews are horrific. Like, I don't have 20 grand to pay out of pocket because there was some miscommunication, or you won't call them back, or there were hundreds of reviews that had many, many different things. And I have met my deductible very early this year, and now come July 1st, that goes out the window. And like, why? So all of that now just gets lost because I have met my deductible from my surgery this year, but now I'm going to be starting over in July. So I've had 2 months or so with my deductible met. So all those things are just very concerning.
Sir, I think she's referencing the everyday care statesman's exclusions that is part of the information that we were given for the proposal. It's page 84, and that's what the title is. It says everyday care statesman exclusions. And then it lists some of the things that were listed in that Padlet question.
Including critical illness?
It doesn't say critical illness, but it says it's the dialysis, organ transplant, all of those other ones.
Okay, so in the question, they asked specifically, these are some things that are included, critical illness. Now, I looked through the document, searched it with a little, the PDF searcher, and I couldn't find anything that excluded critical illness. Again, that would be not much of a healthcare plan. I've seen them cover tons of critical illness, so I'm not worried about that. The dialysis, again, on the Statesman Care Plus, it is covered, and we can show you that. The transplant that we talked about, and the fertility support we talked about, and then the specialty care, it's a pretty broad term for sure, but it covers all kinds of specialty care. So again, specialty care is a pretty broad term, and it's hard to know what exclusions might fall under that, but I certainly didn't find any. So to your Better Business Bureau report, I've read some of those, and it's important to note that Redirect is also a healthcare provider. They are a doctor's office in Arizona. Some of the reviews are based on the doctor's office themselves. I would question a couple of things. First of all, what would be the Better Business reviews of Cigna? Because I know that Cigna's approval rating is probably, the major healthcare carriers are somewhere near just below cable TV. And what I can tell you as somebody who's in the business is that you don't know the half of it. I think Glenn alluded to the fact that those, the profits are through the roof for Cigna. United Healthcare stock is up 900%, something like that. That's because of the fact that they are extracting value, in my opinion, from the American public. So I would ask, let's be fair and make sure that we understand that Cigna would not get perfect better business reviews either, and even worse if people really knew what was going on within the plan. All right. To your point about UC Health, there's plenty of really good doctors at UC Health. There's no question about that. I would never question a provider or the provider's intentions at UC Health. What I would question is the business model. And as somebody who's dealt with UC Health for going on 15 years now, I can tell you that the business model of UC Health is just like the business model of the rest of the hospitals, where they are incentivized to provide high-cost care. Even though it's a nonprofit, they're very profitable. And I think that was it for the point. What was the other point? The deductible. Well, if you've met your deductible so far, the good news is you're walking into a plan with virtually no deductible. Okay, so if you want to provide the EOBs that we can get those over to Redirect, and they can even reduce the deductible, but just know that your HRA is going to capture virtually all of your out-of-pocket costs effective July 1st. So we can go through that exercise for sure, but you're moving into a much better plan with, so that there's a lot less to worry about in terms of deductible. Does that help that? Yeah. Then Redirect covers everything. So that's why I think it's pretty good news.
I want to quickly address that too, because we did have one more month, right, with Cigna before the plan started over, and that fiscal year for us, for our benefits, would have restarted on July 31st. And so, to say that concern I feel is very valid, but it's also good to know where you're standing financially. I want to stress that this isn't a sales pitch. I want to stress to you that this is information, and it's important to hear what you have to say. And I empathize with how it must have felt, how rushed that felt. And I do want you to know that if there's one thing I can ask of you tonight is to put some faith and some trust into the people who did do a lot of the digging and a lot of the legwork. And I want you to know that Mr. Gustafson, Mr. Van Chattel, Ms. Poland, and I did work. This was on the forefront from January because we did know this isn't gonna feel good. Being thrown up like in your face, hey, by the way, we're not going with that. And by that, we made sure that we drilled these guys. Mr. Gustafson really just let it all out there. And in the drilling, though, we wanted to make sure that whatever holes are in this sort of a setup were poked. And there were things that we said, hey, what does this mean? And the best way that I can provide understanding and information to you is putting it in an analogy. And so the way that the education system works with the school of choice, so bringing charters in, bringing private schools, having larger districts with neighborhood schools, by giving parents choices, it creates competition to get the client or to get the person. And by removing, these conglomerates and this idea that you outsource to get a payday, it brings it in-house to where you say, I am going to work as a medical provider to get your business. And so the quality of care goes up in the primary setting and the costs go down. And basically what it turns it into is a free market enterprise. And the direction that this type of a healthcare plan is going in, it's one that's actually creating reform. And it's taking that big money payday to these large insurance companies, and it's saying, put the money in the pocket of the people, put the power in the provider, and make sure people have someone to go to. And so with that, one of the biggest things for me, and I ask them is, so when I'm on an island, and I have Mr. So-and-so come to me and say, Krista, what about this, this, and that? And I don't have the answers. Are you gonna be there? And one of the things that gave me peace of mind is to know we'll have a person. We'll have someone that's going to actually be there to field questions. We're going to have somebody who's actually going to be able to provide answers. And my thoughts on things are if we have access to that, then we utilize it and we don't stop until we get our answer. And I say that as someone who partakes in the plan. So I would love it if Dr. Dygert could speak really quickly to what Pinnacle does and how they operate with it, just to provide clarity with that. But for the most part, I really do appreciate it. I will open the Padlet up again. I froze it just because I wanted to make sure we were able to answer questions. I'll open that back up tonight so that you guys have an opportunity tomorrow. West Campus, you're not until the 17th. East Campus is tomorrow. West Campus, you guys are welcome to come to East Campus, but I know you have activities. With that, take the time to ask the questions. Please do so. I really want you to know that there was a lot of heart and a lot of time in the decision on your behalf that was part of our job. So please know that there was a lot of sincerity in the deliberations and the negotiations.
I heard the question, when will the board be voting on this or taking action? My understanding is that we were being asked to take action on this tonight.
Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, that's correct. We have an open enrollment process. We're going to lose the majority of our staff to summer very soon. And if we can't get permission to move forward with the new plan, we can't get the open enrollment completed before June 30th. And therefore, we're going to lose a whole year. We'll have to go back to the existing offers and look at our previous plan. We're going to have to adjust the budget because it's going to be more expensive. We're going to have to look at all the premiums that we're charging employees. I don't know, Krista, could we wait till Monday or Tuesday?
So that was along the lines of my thinking as well. I was going to ask the question, what is the absolute deadline that we have to take action on this? Some of the concerns that were brought forth tonight, I was hearing about before the board meeting, and this has put me in a little bit of a conundrum. With that said, I don't have the authority to make that decision. That would be a board decision, because the board can override that and say, we're taking action tonight. With that said, what I would propose to the board is consider a special meeting for Tuesday night, given the opportunity for some of the questions, some of the smaller groups to meet. And I understand one of the campuses, based on what you just stated, would not meet until the 17th. I think it would be imperative to let them know that we're encouraging them to participate tomorrow, based on the two meetings that I was hearing were going to be proposed. I see a hand up right now. I'm willing to entertain that question.
So West staff is having our teacher appreciation this Friday, so most of us will not be able to attend any of these meetings come tomorrow. And I would like to just say this one more time. We have gotten the short end of the stick with rushed decisions or prolonged decisions many times this year. First, it was the staff handbook. We were promised something and we never ended up getting it. And now I feel like we're getting rushed into this healthcare plan that none of us know what's going on, and we're not going to have an opportunity to meet. So it feels like we're doing the same thing over again in regards to this situation. And I just would like it to be noted that West Campus staff would really like an opportunity to have all the information beforehand, before a vote is taken. So it has our input on it too, not just East.
One thing I'd like to make clear, you brought up the, Ms. Pelley brought up the point, and you brought up the point about the transplants. I am not a redirect salesman. Okay, this redirect is a type of strategy that we use, but we have it, I think, 53 clients around the state, client groups, and we have 4 with redirect, because that fits in their strategic plan, at this current point. None of them, are, what I would say, stuck in that. So we're looking towards building the right kind of plan as we move forward. I consider myself a consultant who builds, effective health plans, and redirect is sometimes a step that we use. And so I want to make that very clear that, this is not a sale. And in my book of business of 52 clients, we've dealt with transplants before, not through just redirect, if that makes sense.
I'd just like to say, I think personally, knowing what has been going on with the healthcare industry, I think this is actually really pretty amazing. I think it's creative, and it's a way the market is responding to big insurance. I mean, you see it in a lot of different places where people are choosing to get creative to address pharmaceutical costs and other things like that. So on a personal note, I think this actually sounds really amazing. I prefer to at least allow the meeting to happen, people to have a little bit more time to ask questions and process that before we would maybe have a special meeting. I also just understand that the honest to God truth, guys, is that sometimes we have to make decisions on a time frame that just isn't always ideal. We have to make those decisions balancing the financials of it and the fact that we would be going back to the provider we have, and that may not be what is best for everybody. And if we delay too long, we may just be forced to do that. So it's a balancing act with all of that. In an ideal world, we'd always be able to give plenty of notice to all of these different things that we have, decisions we have to make up here, but it just doesn't always work that way when it lands in our lap. And I understand with the market, of things changing, sometimes you don't always know 6 months in advance or whatever what those things are going to look like. So just to understand that I'm sitting up here trying to balance the option to give people more time to ask more questions and be able to reach out directly. I don't know if they can do that, just to be able to reach out more directly and have that conversation similar to what we did in the fall as well. But there will come a point where we are at a breaking point needing to just make a decision and move forward with what we're going to do for the next school year.
I agree with you, Mrs. Clinton. What I'm gathering is the longest we would be able to delay this action is Tuesday the 17th, or not, excuse me, not Tuesday the 17th, next week, Tuesday the 14th. Open enrollment is the 13th through the 25th, 24th. So that would still leave, we could take action Tuesday the 14th. That's 4 days for questions to be submitted, additional questions that maybe there's not a comfort level to stand up, which I completely understand, to talk about your personal health issues in front of a group of people in this room. I would very much support a special meeting on Tuesday the 17th and 14th. I keep saying the 17th, forgive me. I very much would support that with the direction to you, Ms. Pelly, and Mr. Vinchatto and Mr. Gustafson to do everything in your capacity to make this as available as possible to the rest of the staff over the next 96 hours.
Yeah, I just unfroze the tablet, so it's up. I want you to know I don't expect any. The only conflicting thing reviews, the last one is scheduled to go from 7 to 7:45. And so that, Mr. Janela. But with that, keep it anonymous if you ask me to, and then as it goes on, and please spread the word on that. But that's our only thing.
So I'm going to just briefly reiterate, because I don't believe the mic is picking anything up that you're saying, for those that are listening in on our Zoom, and that is on the 14th, there are the principal interviews that evening, so you're requesting an earlier meeting. I have no objections to that, but really it's going to come down to what the board has the capacity for. I would like to hear from some of you if you have some talking points on this or discussion.
I like the idea of waiting for a special meeting on the 14th. I could meet as early as 5 o'clock if other board members are available.
So it would have to be even earlier.
I could meet in the afternoon time frame if we did like early afternoon, or what do we have to do, or if we wanted to go early morning.
Mr. Ross.
As far as the 14th, I'm unavailable. I could maybe, if a Zoom thing is possible, I could maybe do that.
Well, we could call a virtual meeting for those purposes.
I could do a Zoom if we did it like 3 o'clock or something late afternoon, but probably not any earlier than that.
3 o'clock. Any objections? All right. Board, is there any further discussion on this particular topic tonight? And I want to at least give the opportunity to you gentlemen to speak if you would like as well. Or
there we go. I'm John Dygert. I'm the owner of Pinnacle. I'm a family medicine doctor, primary care. So I would just say, I think the questions that I heard were exactly the kind of questions and concerns that we typically get when you shake up the healthcare industry. But rest assured, we've heard these questions before and these concerns before, and these are exactly the kind of things that these fellows, who are just warriors in this reform movement, have close to their own heart. Okay, so I would say one year from now, you will all realize that if you decide to go with this, that you will realize that you've made a really great decision. Basically, you get the same coverage, but these guys are eliminating the healthcare industrial complex gouging you. And that's the difference. That's how you can save this much money. You won't experience a drop-off in quality. It is my job as primary care and my team to make sure that you actually feel a bump in quality, a very tangible increase. And then also we help with cost containment as well. So that's kind of my role in this, as a small piece of what the plan entails. Anybody have any questions for me? And I can just repeat them if it's...
I'd just say I think some of the fear too just is unknown, but oftentimes it's not until you start trying to actually really utilize the program that you realize what is actually much better for you, much more flexible. And I just encourage everybody with that because, like I said, this happens almost every year, I feel like, with my husband's company, and there's that uncertainty of it. And it's just not until you're really trying to be the user and you're in there doing it that you realize it's actually much easier, it's much more personal, or something along those lines. So, I mean, I hope that's what this would be, gentlemen, but just that's a fact of life with any of these kinds of changes to any benefits plans that we would be entertaining. So just to keep that in mind.
Any questions?
thank you, Dr. Dygert.
You bet.
Sir, okay.
Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
Could I ask, I know people will start leaving as this agenda item's over. Maybe you guys could go to the hallway if employees want to talk to you about questions after, because they can't make it. Teacher Appreciation Day is a big deal, and we don't want to interfere with that. So maybe you guys could be available in the hallway to answer questions.
Excellent idea. Thank you, Mr. Gustafson. Board, at this point then, I will make a motion that we approve a special meeting Tuesday the 14th virtually for 3 p.m.
Second.
Any discussion on said motion, which was seconded by Mrs. Hoyda? Hearing none, Mr. Carley?
Aye.
Ms. Clinton?
Aye.
Ms. Hoyda?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ryan Graham votes aye. That motion carries. We will have a special meeting next Tuesday, the 14th at 3 p.m. Again, just to reiterate, Ms. Pelley, if you could put out whenever these presentations are tomorrow and the recordings and how all that's going to shake out over the next 4 days, we're asking that you facilitate that. So, thank you.
Thank you to all of you that came tonight too and personally sat here and listened in and asked questions as well. So I appreciate that.
And Thank you, ma'am. And gentlemen, thank you for coming in tonight. Thank you for presenting on this. I have read through, I understand exactly what this will do for MA. I want to be cognizant, empathetic to the fact that if our staff and teachers have not had enough time and that opportunity to digest this, study up on this, ask their questions. I mean, this is about as good as we can do with the 4 days, so, but thank you both. All right, the next item on the agenda is public hearing, fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget. So to our community and to the board, we are legally required to open this up right now to a public hearing. I'm just going to read this. In accordance with CRS 22-44-1091, notice is hereby given that the fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget has been submitted to the Board of Directors of Monument Academy for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2024, and is available for inspection by way of electronic copy upon request. The proposed budget may be found on the school's website at monumentacademy.net. So this public notice of this meeting is open right now. And what this allows for is any comments from anyone attending tonight in regard to the proposed budget that has been provided electronically on our website. Do we have any comment? Hearing none, then this public meeting is now closed. At this time, I will turn this over to Mr. Gustafson for the next item on the agenda, fiscal year 24-25, proposed budget and organizational chart.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board members, I sent a PowerPoint to today. I apologize I couldn't get it out sooner. With everything going on with the healthcare, I was kind of diverted for a while, but if you could follow along in your PowerPoint, my apologies to the audience. One of the items in the budget next year is for TVs in this room so the audience can see what we're talking about. I think that would be a great improvement for our audience. So that's in this budget. So first of all, the objectives of the 24-25 year budget in priority order was to make progress on bond ratio compliance, especially for the East Campus, restore the overcut budgets that we had to hit pretty hard this year that were cut as a result of the declining enrollment below budget, provide adequate staff compensation, enhance school security, improve the employee benefit plan, streamline administration staffing, and address West Campus capital needs. The next slide talks to our budget assumptions. We are proposing a budget based on 1,093 students. That's 546 at the elementary, 407 at the middle school, 140 at the high school. That's a decrease of 10 from the prior year, but the most important factor of that is a decrease of 40 at the West Campus at the elementary. We have a bubble of enrollment moving from 5th grade to middle school that's going to cause a settling of our enrollment at elementary. We do expect it to gently grow into the future, but now we don't have any more of those large bubbles at West. But losing 40 kids is a big deal at one campus. Remember, we have to do all of our accounting separately between the East Campus and the West Campus in accordance with the bond covenants, which is the law for us. So we have to account for those separately. When we lose 40 students at one campus, that's $440,000 of revenue that we lost at that campus. The good news is at the East Campus, we're looking at a recoupment of about 30 students for next year. Overall, 10 students less than last year. I think it's a more conservative approach to the budget. I think it will allow us to hit that. We're cautiously optimistic that we'll even exceed that budget target. But right now, we're using 1,093 students for both campuses. We are looking at a fairly significant increase in per pupil funding from the state of Colorado. The legislature finished yesterday The School Finance Act provides Lewis Palmer for $10,791 per student. That's an increase of just over $700 per pupil. So we're excited about that. That's great news. I will tell you, there is some reservation at the state level about how well the state can sustain the new School Finance Act going forward. They're looking still, remember the issue we were concerned about with our School Finance Act? They did adopt a bill that will start putting that into place next year over a 6-year period. It's a 6-year phase-in. We think that that's still going to be okay for Lewis Palmer. And remember, we get exactly what Lewis Palmer gets in terms of per pupil revenue. But it does cause me a little bit of anxiety that if that bill is fully implemented over the 6 years, we are not going to see these kinds of increases in per pupil funding in the future. Unfortunately, that bill causes more resources to go to higher poverty school districts like Denver, Pueblo, even Colorado Springs, D11, my old district, and less money going to more affluent districts like Douglas County, Lewis Palmer, Academy. So it's a shifting of resources in school finance that won't bode well for us in the future. I do have some hope that Senator McCluskey, or Speaker McCluskey, she's term limited, and I'm hoping, she's been the driver behind this bill. I'm hoping that with her leaving office, maybe not all the components will get implemented, but at least the 6-year phase-in buys us time to do that. And remember, at the legislature, 6 years is an eternity. So we'll see if it really survives 6 years.
Glenn, quick question on that.
Yeah.
Was that particular amendment or to that bill, was that voted on this session, or are we waiting till next session?
It was approved in this session. I think it's House Bill 1488.
So the 6-year phase-in. So originally, the discussion was for the 25-26 fiscal year that we would see a reduction of approximately $700 or so per student, D38, D20, Dougco, Littleton, while many of the other districts were subsidized with that. Would that $700 per pupil be spread out over the 6 years? Okay.
It would, and the amount is not the same. It's less.
It's less.
And there's some grandfather language in there.
Okay.
But even with all that, that means, well, grandfather, does that mean we're at the same as last year? Because that's flat. That's not great. So yeah, it's not a reduction, but it's not great. So, but it did pass.
So when will we better understand how that's going to affect District 38?
CDE is in the process of developing the runs right now.
Okay. So we should know that this year to be able to plan accordingly once they do implement that. And correct me if I'm wrong, would that still be the 25-26 fiscal year?
That is correct.
Okay. So next year, obviously 24-25, we would be still looking at that increase based on what they have adopted.
Yes, because this is from the School Finance Act, which is a separate bill that was passed for 24-25.
Great. Thank you for the clarification on that.
You bet. So we also are looking at approximately $600 per pupil in mill levy override. Just as a reminder, we get our fair share of the Lewis Palmer mill levy override. They actually have a relatively small mill levy override compared to similar districts. Douglas County is probably quadruple. Colorado Springs District 11 is probably 6 times the Lewis Palmer mill levy override. Their mill levy override is very small, but we do get our fair share of that. The next slide talks about our enrollment. You can see our history going back for over 10 years. In fiscal year 12-13, we were at 846 kids. We were growing, but we had a couple of blip years in there. We had a decline in fiscal year 13-14, a decline in fiscal year 19-20. Remember, that was COVID year, although the count was before COVID. And then you could see what 23-24 was. We actually decreased by 4.5 students over the prior year, but we budgeted an increase, so that was what really hit us. On the right side of the slide, you could see the enrollment that we're looking at, the composition of the 1,091 students, and you can also see the breakout of how that impacts us in terms of revenue. you could see the loss of 40 students is a decrease of $431,000 for the West Campus. So that's a big deal for us, and we're trying to deal with that as we rebalance that budget. So here's some of the changes in the budget. The budget's a long document. It's over 30 pages long. And I want you to appreciate the story of how this all came together, because it's actually quite positive and very exciting. At the West Campus, we did go out to the administration and to the leadership of the campuses and said, what do you need for next year? Now, that was a little bit easier to accommodate at the East Campus. It's a lot harder to accommodate when you're cutting the budget in terms of revenue at the West Campus. But first and foremost, an approximate 3% raise for staff. Now, I know 3% is not great. Remember that inflation came in at 5%. I will tell you my raise at the Colorado Department of Education for next year is 3%. It's on the low end of what we're seeing for charter schools, but it is in the ballpark of what we're seeing for charter schools. So it's not as great as we would love it to be, but remember, for fiscal year 23-24, the year we're currently in, we gave raises based on an expectation of more enrollment than we actually received. Staff got a very significant raise for this fiscal year. This will bring us down back to a more normal, reasonable level based on our actual resources that we have. We do include the homeschool program with a $10,000 subsidy, meaning we expect to lose $10,000 the first year, just as a loss leader to get the program up and running, get all the curriculum purchased, get everything up and running and ready to go, and we hope that in the future that program will continue to grow and bring in more revenue for the school. We are converting the school resource officer, which we implemented on January 1st at the West Campus, to full-time. He actually was full-time, but he was only hired for half the year. Now we're going to have to pick up the full year of the school resources salary. Just keep in mind, it's expensive to have an SRO, a school resource officer. We're looking at approximately $90,000 per officer, and that's only for a partial year.
If I could speak to that real quick to clear up any confusion for those that may be listening. The reason we only had the SRO at the West Campus for half the year is because we were awaiting for another officer to go through the program with Monument PD. But obviously, to Mr. Gustafson's point, we will have both officers for the full fiscal school year, effective July 1, and we're not waiting, of course, on any additional officers at this point.
Thank you for that clarification, President Graham. We are proposing the reduction of 2 FTEs of teachers at the West Campus due to the 40 fewer students. I believe those are both done through attrition. And 1 teacher assistant, which I also think is through attrition. 40 less kids means less teachers, exact same class size. So on the average, remember we do it on the average, we're still providing the same class size ratios, but when you lose $400,000 of revenue, we've got to find ways to offset that loss of revenue. Parking lot purchase is included, $1.2 million. We obviously can't fund that out of our operating budget. That's coming entirely from reserves at this point, unless we could find a more creative mechanism to be able to afford that parking lot. It also includes the 2 HVAC replacement units. You can see I budgeted $200,000. You approved a cost of $160,000, and I'm presuming there's no extras that come in because of unanticipated consequences. We'll actually save a little bit of money on that. I have to budget that in fiscal year 24-25 as well, because remember, we have to charge it to the year when the services are delivered and performed. So we don't know. We wanted the board to approve that contract tonight so we could hit the summer construction season and not interrupt instruction during the school year. But we don't know if that construction will actually happen in June or July or somewhere, on either edge of that. So at this point, it's budgeted in 23-24 and 24-25, but obviously there's only going to be 1 year of expenditure. And then in terms of all the budget supplements, there's a lot of these. they don't look that big when you look at them, but we had to cut the budget so hard to get the budget back in balance. But they add up to some money when you add all these up in total. We're adding, remember, this is still all at the West Campus, $10,000 in professional development, $11,000 in instructional supplies and materials / curriculum, $10,000 for the copier contract increase that's expiring in June. We're adding $25,000 for maintenance and snow removal, $6,000 for half of the board tech that will be installed at both where we use all the technology for the board meetings, $20,000 for our IT contract, $6,000 for all of our human resources subscriptions that I didn't realize, and I had totally cut that budget before I realized that we actually have some software that we have to have. So that $5,000 more for marketing. Remember, these are all supplements. These are not the total amount of the budgets for the West Campus, and an additional $15,000 for legal. At the East Campus, first and foremost, $200,000 into reserve for bond ratio compliance. So we're required to have a debt service coverage ratio of between 1.1 and 1.2%. It's a fairly complicated financial ratio. We're nowhere near that. We have not hit that ratio. And so this will get us started on that point. In theory, by budgeting this, that money's going to be in the bank, it's going to be earning interest, but it's not going to get spent. It's going to just start building our reserve towards the bond ratios. It's going to take us a couple of years to get there, but I'm pretty confident that any bondholder or bond rating agency will be thrilled to see that we're making progress to our bond ratios. I would love to fully fund it at 1.1 or 1.2. We can't afford that. You're talking about $750,000. If we did that, we wouldn't be able to do any of these other things on the list. There just would be nothing left. We are also 3% approximately for staff. Now it depends. Classified staff and administrative staff, it's a 3% across the board COLA, so to speak. For teachers, it's a combination of a step and a percentage raise. So it all depends on where they are on our salary schedule that we approved for 23-24. One FTE for admin assistant that was talked to early in the meeting. Originally, we were looking at a counselor. We've changed that to an admin assistant that could be multi-hatted and do a variety of resources. Colin can talk to that if you have more questions about that. 0.4 for an additional physics or other teacher. 0.5 to boost the custodial support in this building from 1.5 to 2, and a $500 increase for middle school class coverage stipend for all of the middle school teachers who are teaching during their sixth period planning period. And then, of course, their budget supplements, we increased instructional supplies by $10,000. The net increase of the athletics program, $5,000. That's an offset with the revenue that will come in. $10,000, the other half of the copier contract. $20,000 for curriculum. $10,000 for school psychology services as a purchase service. $20,000 for IT. $16,000 for professional development. $10,000 for Title IX. $20,000 for marketing. We totally cut the marketing budget for this campus for 23-24, so we're going to start to restore that. The other $6,000 for the board tech at this campus. The other $5,000 for HR costs, and the other $15,000 for legal. So you can see there's a lot of holes in the budget that we're filling with this budget. I'm just going to quickly go through some of the next slides. There's the general fund summary that shows that our budget is balanced. $15 million of revenue, $15 million of expenditures in the general fund, an estimate of our reserves that we would end the year with approximately $3.4 million of reserves. Remember, we are not allowed to touch the Tabor reserve unless we meet the constitutional allowances, which to this date, since the passage of Tabor back in 1992, no school district or charter school has ever met those criteria. So it basically is just sitting there in reserve. But you can see the big picture of what our budget looks like compared to last year. Notice last year at the mid-year we were looking at a deficit budget. So we've restored that budget now, and we're in a good position. The next one is the preschool fund. You see that the preschool fund, we have lowered preschool tuition fees. In accordance with the board initiative that was done this winter, you guys directed me to develop a preschool budget with lower preschool fees for parents. And so you could see that there's a $125,000 reduction in the transfer or in the revenue that will come from preschool fees. You'll also notice that we're going to draw down our fund balance by $82,000. That's on purpose. We're deficit spending to have the preschool program, which does have about a $200,000 fund balance, help pay for the air conditioning units at the West Campus. They obviously share that building. It's appropriate for them to share the cost of the HVAC, and so that's purposefully drawing that down out of that fund. Then it's a non-recurring cost, so we will be able to restore the budget the following year. The next is the Facilities Corp. The Facilities Corporation acts as a conduit for the 2014 bonds which finance the West Campus building. The way that works is the state intercepts the money for the debt service straight before it even gets to Lewis Palmer and transfers that to our fiscal agent, which is BOK Bank. That's $925,000, and that assures our bondholders that we'll make our principal and interest payments. So it's still our revenue and expense, but we never see it. Neither does Lewis Palmer. It totally bypasses Lewis Palmer and Monument Academy and goes straight to our trustee, BOK Bank. The next fund is the Foundation Fund. That's Fund 53. Same concept, Facilities Corporation that funded this building with the 2019 bonds. The debt service on this building is more than double the West Campus, $1.85 million. You can see, same concept that with the Intercept Fund, they capture that money, they give it straight to our trustee. We use a different trustee for the Foundation Fund. We use UMB Bank, which is the more common trustee in Colorado, and they capture that money and then they pay the debt service, the principal and interest on those bonds throughout the year, but we still post that as revenue and expense. And then last is the Pupil Activity Fund. This is all the different clubs and activities, the chess club, the drama club, the senior class. All of those have balances that they get from fundraisers and activities that they generate themselves as money. That money goes into an account just for them, but we do have to record the revenues and expenditures of that account. And so it goes into there. We keep track of them. We literally have over 50 different clubs and activities that we segregate their money and keep track of that. Ballpark estimate, we spend about $300,000 a year on all those clubs and activities that they've raised. It's their money that they've raised. The next slides talk about the budget per school. I'm not going to go through these in detail, but you can see, if you're curious, how each budget for each school works. The first page is the revenues. The second is our instructional, special education, athletics, and pupil support expenditures. The next one's all the other categories that are more administrative oriented, and the school office, the principal, and the school secretaries, registrars, and business finance. And last, facilities, central services, which includes HR and IT. And you can see at the bottom how the budget comes into balance. By doing that, we are doing the accounting between high school and middle school campus, so you can see exactly how that plays out for both campuses. And then the next slide on summary 5 shows the breakout of those exact same expenditures by object. So we do most things by program, like instruction, administration, facilities. That's by program. By object means by salary, employee benefits, purchase services, supply of materials. You can see it's the same numbers, just sorted differently. It's kind of a nice snapshot. You can see that $6 million of our $15 million is going to salaries. You add another $2.2 million is going to benefits. That includes para, Medicare, and health insurance. And so you can see that about half, actually more than half, of our budget is going to staff compensation. And then you're probably interested about the number of FTEs, the number of people we have in the organization. You can see that by school and by category, we have 6 categories that CDE requires us to use to categorize employees: administrators, teachers and licensed staff, non-teaching professionals, and then 3 different categories of classified. These are all non-exempt employees subject to overtime, parapros, school secretaries, facilities and transportation. And you could see 7 FTE at the preschool, 62.33 at elementary, 31.15 at middle, 21 at high school, for a total of 121.9 FTEs at Monument Academy in total. So about 122 staff members this year. And the next slide shows our debt service schedule. I always like to remind you of the debt service because we do have that big balloon payment coming up. You can see that on this slide. In April of 26, we've got a $27.7 million payment in addition to the interest that we have to make. So it's nice to see that that balloon is coming. We need to continue to pray that interest rates will come down. They've been slow to come down. The Fed has not moved on the interest rate. We really need that to happen, and we need the long end of the curve to start coming down, both for the real estate market and, more importantly, for the bond market, so that we can refinance those bonds at a more affordable rate. The good news is we've been in discussions with various bond organizations, 3 different companies. Right now, we could refinance all of our bonds if we cross-collateralize, meaning one bond issue, one MA for both campuses, at about the same amount of debt service we pay right now. That's the good news. The bad news is that means West is going to pay more because they have a really good interest rate. East is going to pay less, and it also means if we refinance right now, we're looking at about a 6.9% interest rate, which is not great on tax-exempt money. So we really would like to see that come down by 1 to 2 percentage points. That would free up money to allow us to address some capital construction throughout the building. It would free money up and allow us to do some things. But the good news is, if we had to, we could pull the trigger today. It's not pretty, but we could do it, and we would be okay. Okay, you have 3 resolutions that you will approve as part of the budget adoption. The first one is the appropriation resolution. It's the most important one. The appropriation resolution is just a fancy accounting term to say this is the maximum amount that we will spend for each fund. By state statute, we are not allowed to exceed our appropriation, just like the federal government. So our general fund appropriation is $19 million. That's higher than our $15 million budget because that includes we appropriate all of our reserves. The preschool fund is a little over $500,000. Facilities Corp, 2.5, Foundation Fund, 3, and Pupil Activity Fund, $400,000. Total budget that we're looking at right now for next year is $25.5 million, and the appropriation resolution is the most important resolution you do. When you make your motion to approve the budget, it includes all 3 resolutions, and we'll have those signed. The next one is the use of beginning fund balance resolution. This one's important because the beginning fund balance resolution tells you if you are deficit spending in any single fund. We're going to deficit spend in 2 funds. 1, the preschool fund because of the HVAC units, and 2, by just a rounding number in the building corp, $2,000. We're going to deficit spend there. We've been earning phenomenal interest in both of our building corporation funds, and we're just going to deficit spend by $2,000. That's just rounding in that fund. And so, but I have to disclose that to you, and you have to approve that resolution that you are authorizing us to deficit spend. That's important. There was a school district, St. Vrain, about 20 years ago that forgot to budget like half of their staff. The state treasurer had to take them over and pay their bills and make their payroll. It was horrible. It was in the paper every single day. As a result of that, we have legislation that now requires this resolution. And then last but not least is the interfund borrowing resolution. The interfund borrowing resolution authorizes your finance department to borrow from one fund to the other to basically loan money between funds. We need to do that because we use the pooled cash approach to our checkbook. So picture this, we have one bank account, that's our checking account at Integrity Bank, a great partner for us that helped us with the gala. We have one bank account, but we run both the general fund and the preschool fund through that same bank account. So on any given day, either the preschool fund is spending money or the general fund is spending money, and we're borrowing from the other fund to make that work. So it's just a semantics, but in the end, it all works out. It's why you see on the monthly financial statements, we will often have a negative balance in general fund checking. It's not because we're overdrawn, it's because we have a positive balance in the preschool fund. That means the general fund is borrowing from the preschool fund. And that's what this resolution authorizes us to do. We have to pay that money by law back by 90 days. In reality, it gets paid back all the time, every day. So that concludes the budget. I have to tell you in summary, I'm super excited about this budget. It restored our balances. It's bringing us closer into compliance with our bond covenant requirements. We're providing compensation increase for our staff. We are addressing safety and security by taking that 0.5 to 1.0 for the school resource officer. And most importantly, we're filling a lot of holes in the budget where we overcut. This budget is a huge success from where we were 18 months ago. I'm very, very proud of this budget. I need to disclose, because of your action today, I did propose in this budget that we would decrease the school's contribution to the insurance plan from $770 to $700 per month. The rationale for that was employees are saving literally almost $10,000 on the plan by participating in that plan. I'm asking you to approve this budget tonight. You need to know that we can amend this budget, and we do amend it. We do a mid-year amendment in December. If we have to, we can amend that budget sooner to reflect that. If you went back to the old plan, which would be very challenging, but if you did that, we would need to go back to the 770. That will throw our budget out of balance by about $30,000. We'll have to find a way to rebalance, meaning reduce some budget line items to put that budget back into balance if we go back to the old healthcare plan. So this budget was based on the assumption of the approval of the new benefit plan, but if you vote differently on Tuesday afternoon, we can easily adjust and correct this budget and make it work. Because we're going to do it anyway. We're going to amend the budget and fix it, if not once, probably a couple of times next year. But this budget's a huge success. You should be very proud of this budget. We really have taken care of the Monument Academy family, and we're going to be well positioned for the future. And now if we could just keep bringing those kids in and keep growing and improving our programs for kids, we will be very successful. And with that, I would be glad to take any questions that you might have.
We're very proud of you. This is phenomenal. And it has been. Just having you a part of Monument Academy has really helped us turn the tide on some of the issues we were facing, and just a lot of good news. And I know interest rates aren't great right now, but knowing that we can dodge the bullet if we had to is paramount. And I mean, that is something we've been discussing for years now. So I just want to say thank you to you, Mrs. Poland, because I know there's been a lot of time, Ms. Pelly, put into this and getting us to where we are right now. So thank you for that. And thank you for answering the question as well I was going to have regarding tabling the vote until Tuesday, but absolutely we can amend this budget if needed based on the board action come Tuesday night. So is there any discussion? Any questions for Mr. Gustafson? All right, then I will make a motion. A motion that the board approves the fiscal year 24-25 proposed budget, which authorizes the appropriation resolution, the use of beginning fund balance resolution, and the interfund borrowing resolution.
Second.
Mr. Carley has seconded that motion. That opens this for further discussion. Hearing no discussion, I will call the vote. Mr. Carley.
Aye.
Mrs. Clinton.
Aye.
Mrs. Hoyda.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Ryan Graham votes aye. That motion carries. Again, thank you, sir, for all your work on this budget. That will move us on. Give me 1 second. I've lost my agenda. To the organizational chart. Ms. Pelly, will you be presenting on that?
I'll get there. With that, we definitely wanted to provide that visual for you guys. And so a couple of the things that we changed were just who reports to whom. And then with the reduction in force, the jobs that have been removed, and then the proposed positions that we had for you guys to review the job descriptions. And so with that, we have the executive director reporting to you, and then we have the finance director reporting to Mr. Vinchattel. And underneath that, though, we've got the finance director mentor, Mr. Gustafson, and then the executive director mentor, Ms. Richard. And so from there up, nothing really changed drastically, except for the removal of the assessment coordinator, the addition of the assistant for the dean and the AD, and then the registrar assistant. Oh, and the homeschool program was put in as well. And since we're contracting with Ms. Scala, we put her in that yellow. But then, of course, the homeschool teachers and the homeschool TAs will be employed by us. Any questions on the proposed org chart?
I do not have any, board. I believe you answered the questions I had from the last meeting and some of the other questions that came up from the board. The intent then would be to take action on this tonight.
Yeah, and it would require you to look at the job description for the dean and AD assistant. You guys did get the registrar and the secondary principal job description. That I know we got the green light to post those. I have not posted for the athletic director or the dean assistant because I was waiting for board approval on the job description.
So board, we had given some time to hear any discussion from the community regarding just having one secondary principal. I have not heard any further discussion since the conversation we had at the last board meeting. Have any of you? And Mr. Vinchattel, not to put you on the spot, but obviously you had a lot of input into this organizational chart, considering that everybody on this chart is going to funnel up to you before funneling back to the board. Do you support what's in front of you tonight?
I do.
And Ms. Pelly, in regard to the job, what's the word I'm looking for, the positions?
Job description?
Descriptions. By approving this org chart, we're essentially approving those job descriptions, or would your intent be that we also approve the job descriptions, which I feel would be a little bit outside of our purview?
So I actually had this conversation with Mr. Miller as well, and he said that it is the discretion of the board to approve the job descriptions, that it's you have the right to approve any job descriptions to make sure that they are in compliance with the mission, the vision. The budget allows for this, and it actually, like we said, gives us a little more wiggle room. We were also able to keep those two front office positions at West. So some of the shifting and maneuvering allowed us to do that. So what I would say is, if you're comfortable with the way this org chart is set up, and you want time to look at the job description, I'm happy to let you guys have the time to do that. I would like to get the job posted sooner rather than later, just because the hiring season is at its highest right now.
I looked through the job descriptions, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the board, so board, please provide any feedback on this. But I trust what Mr. Vinchattel has looked at when it comes to the principal. I trust what you guys have come together with the assistant dean position and then the assistant registrar. I'm not necessarily going to be the guy to understand exactly what all those duties entail, and that's why we rely on you guys.
And I did get Mr. Svensson's input a lot on what he would need for the athletic department, and then Ms. Stuka also helped with that from the assistant principal perspective of what supports the people would need who are operating in those roles, as well as where her heart lies, which is what won't sacrifice what's good for kids. And so I felt really confident about the job descriptions, and I felt confident about the positions being requested.
Yeah, I read the descriptions as well, and I don't have any issues with any of them.
Okay.
All right, I hear no further discussion from the board. If you give me a moment, I'm going to craft a motion. All right, board, I motion to approve the fiscal year 24-25 organizational chart along with the athletic director and dean assistant, registrar assistant, and secondary principal job descriptions.
Second.
Ms. Clinton has seconded that motion. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Carley, how do you vote, sir?
Aye.
Ms. Clinton?
Aye.
Ms. Hoyda?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ron Graham votes aye. That motion carries. Thank you for putting in the time on these job descriptions, and I appreciate the opportunity to review them. So I wasn't pushing back on the idea of us doing that, but you guys understand what I'm saying. So that will move us along. Next item on the agenda will be policies DJ, which is purchasing and contracting, and DK, compensation.
Yeah, Mr. President, just as a reiteration from earlier, the governance committee did meet and we did review these policies, and Mr. Gustafson will please address us about the content, but the governance committee does agree with them.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mrs. Hoyda, for advising the board on that.
Thank you, Director Hoda. Included in your packet, this feels like the old days at D11 where I had like 10 agenda items on the same night. That's the story of my career, I think. A couple of things I desperately wanted to get done when I came to Monument Academy. We've made so much progress on so many things with the bank reconciliation and the financial statements and the budget, and we're just getting better and better, but we're past the heavy lifting and we're fine-tuning now, which is really nice. But I really wanted to have two policies approved by the board. The first one is board policy DJ, which is the purchasing policy. And what that does is it creates a hierarchy of who can sign contracts, and also when do we have to bid things out. And so if you look through the contract, purchases up to $5,000, we could just buy. We don't have to go through a big, heavy process for that. Non-continuous contracts between $5,000 and $30,000 shall be based on 3 documented price quotes. You need to realize that's a lot. These low limits are fairly tight and low, so we're going to be doing a little bit of work on that. And but I think that's a good thing. And you need to know that we're right now accumulating all the different curriculum contracts and software contracts, and we have quite a few that fall in that $5,000 to $30,000 range, where sometimes it's not, we would never want to leave SDS without careful consideration. That's our financial and HR software. So we won't go out to get quotes every year. It is over $5,000, so we'll do a sole source justification, we call it, to stay with the same vendor because of the efficiency and the disruption of changing. And then purchases over $30,000, we're required to go out to bid, and then that's from $30,000 to $50,000. And anything over 30, I think I'm trying to remember, purchase of 50,000 or more shall be based on a competitive bidding process and shall be approved by the Board of Education. So if it's over 50, it's got to come to the board. We did talk at the policy committee about slightly lower thresholds. With inflation, we have a lot more contracts falling into that medium range that would bring a lot of agenda items. With you guys only meeting once a month, that would create some challenges for us. I think we could still notify you of those contracts. The fact that we now have a common database where we're tracking those will make it easier for us to be able to alert you, hey, we renewed these contracts. Maybe we could make that a standing agenda item just to let you know that we renewed some contracts. But that's the big part of it. It does talk about a few other things in terms of what's in the best interest. There is an exigency clause for emergencies. In the case we had to do something quickly, like a fire or a flood, we could take care of those things right away and then come back to the board for approval after the fact. But there's also a section on credit card purchases. Someday, I would like to get us to a procurement card process. That's a governmental credit card, which is a smart card. It has logic built into the microstrip that restricts it to certain vendors. We're not quite ready for that. We use our credit cards a lot. It's a lower transaction cost for us. It's a lot easier for us to use a credit card, and we get points back when we do that, so it's a lower transaction cost. But it is a little bit of a loss of internal controls. We do have to secure those credit cards very carefully because it is just like a regular credit card. And so we do secure those, and we know how they're used and who's authorized to have them and what their limits are on those. So it addresses all those things. It gives a lot of control over to the executive director, but we also have some authority in the finance office and with the principals. And I think you'll see that this is a good starting point for a purchasing policy. I modeled it a little bit after Lewis Palmer and a little bit after a charter school policy that I had, and kind of blended the two together to make it a practical purchasing policy that would work well for our school. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Glenn, I see it says number 3, purchases of 30,000 through 49,999. And it goes through there, and it says these purchases must be approved by the board prior to contract execution. And then number 4, with purchase of over 50,000, approved by the board. So I'm confused because then I thought you were saying with inflation that would be cumbersome if we were waiting on board approval for the $30,000 to $50,000.
I think I missed that. Thank you for that catch. The intention of the policy committee, I believe, was that the cap would be 30,000, and anything over 30 would come to the board. So if you could just mention that in the motion, we'll make that correction. Is that your recollection, Ms. Hoyta?
Yeah, we talked about anything over 30.
Yeah, 30. Yeah. So I apologize that. Originally, at one time, we had that at 50, and I forgot to change that.
But we're good. But we're good with the wording that is here then.
We'll just tweak the dollar amounts, and we may have to tweak the wording just a little bit to make it work.
Both 3 and 4 say the same thing.
Right, that's what I'm seeing too.
So the way I interpret this policy is that number 3, purchases of 30,000 through 49,999 would be approved by the board prior to contract execution. Then number 4, purchase of 50,000 or more shall be based on competitive bidding process and shall be approved by the board.
So Glenn, I wonder, was the distinction intended that these are budgeted items as opposed to outside of the budget?
We had talked about that, but I think in the end we decided not to do that. So my proposal would be that we eliminate 3 and turn 4 into 3.
Gotcha, yes.
At 30,000. Don't you think
Yeah.
that would be and that would make the motion easy with the elimination of number 3.
So the elimination of number 3, number 4 just being purchases of 30,000 or more.
Yes.
And if the board's uncomfortable, we could always bring it back at the June meeting for approval. We are in a heavy buying season to start for the school year, but I don't think this is time sensitive. If the board would rather see the revision, we could clean it up and bring it back at the June meeting.
My feeling is that we can just make the revision tonight here in open session, take
No, I'll just
action.
include it in my motion.
And then one other question based on Monument Academy best interest, uses the amount of 50,000 there. Would that still be 50 or 30?
That should be 30 as well.
Okay. So I don't have anything further on this.
Okay, so I move that we adopt policy DJ, contract expenditure authorization, with the edit that we replace paragraph 3 with paragraph 4 and say that purchases of 30,000 or above shall be based on at least 3 documented price quotes that are supported by written confirmation. Examples of written confirmation include a screenshot of pricing from the vendor's website, an email from the vendor's representative, or a quote on the vendor's letterhead. These purchases must be approved by the board prior to contract execution. And then lower in the paragraph under Monument Academy's best interests, the dollar amount of $50,000 be changed to $30,000.
Second.
Ms. Clinton has seconded that motion. Any discussion, board? Hearing Mr. Carley? Aye. Mrs. Clinton?
Aye.
Ms. Hoyda?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ryan Graham votes aye. That motion carries on policy DJ. Next will be policy DK, payroll procedures.
Yeah, and I move that we adopt policy DK, payroll procedures as presented.
Could I have some discussion?
1 second. I'm going to go ahead and second that motion, and that will open it up for discussion. And so we'll turn it over to you, Mr. Gustafson.
My apologies. The board approved board policy DK, DK, as you can see a while ago, my first draft of that. But as I've learned more about DK, and you saw that we actually piloted this tonight, Krista did a nice job of a new template showing you all the different personnel changes. It's a really good internal control from a finance perspective that all compensation changes, position additions, position deletions, et cetera, and there's a lot of those kinds of things that go on in a school year, change of contract year, all kinds of little things, have to go to the board for approval. The only exception to that is things that you've authorized already, specifically in terms of the employee contracts and the class coverage stipends, which are already included in our budget. So anytime we make a position change, we'll bring that to the board for approval. State statute is a tiny bit fuzzy on this, but most school districts bring personnel recommendations every single board meeting with every single change, with the employee name, the nature of the change, and the salary. I know the salary can be uncomfortable at times. It's a tricky point for people. I've been in little school districts where they make us print the payroll register, that's even more obtrusive to me. But I'm okay if the board doesn't want to put the salary in there, or if you want to keep it more in the board packet as opposed to the public document. But all of our salaries are public information. Anybody can core those at any given time. And I tell people, I don't get a lot of traction to this, and I didn't at D11 either. You just get used to it. At D11, I had my name in the board packet 12 different times as I changed jobs throughout my career. And you just get used to it. It is a recommended best practice. It's also really helpful for us to keep track of those changes, and also for you to know exactly what's going on. That way that things don't happen without your knowledge. And that can happen in a small organization where somebody just gives somebody a pay raise and never tells the board about it. So that's the intention of this. You can see it includes stipends, although what I'm going to suggest, and I will work with Ms. Pelly on, is a stipend list that we would submit to you in whole, so you'll be able to pre-approve all the athletic stipends, the class coverage stipends, and all that in one fell swoop. But you can see it includes stipends, and it includes extra duty pay, all those kinds of things. So it brings more control to the compensation system, which, in my opinion, is essential to good budget discipline. We're trying to get good control over this. Not so much at Monument Academy, but in my CDE job, I run into this all across the state where things happen without the board knowing. The intention here is you will always be aware of those compensation changes.
I very much support this policy, and it's a much-needed policy. To your question about salaries being posted, it is public information. We're a taxpayer-funded school. All that is corable. I would ask the board for their input on, would you prefer to see that in the board packet, understanding the board packet gets cored, or would you prefer to see that in the public packet as well, which in turn would be in the board packet?
I guess I would err in favor of transparency and just put it in the full packet, the regular packet.
I have no objections to that. I'm not hearing any from the board. Policy number DK would allow for that as it's written.
It would, and I'll just, I would suggest that Executive Director Vinchattel would just direct Krista to do that. I do picture the future where you're going to have, you saw the new contract award templates tonight, where everything was organized in a certain way with a summary document in front of the proposals. And you saw the personnel recommendations that Krista prepared. I picture that as standing agenda items that you will have every single board meeting in the future.
So Ms. Hoyta made a motion to approve policy number DK. I seconded that motion, so we're still open for discussion. Is there anything further from the board? Anything further you would like to add?
No, sir.
Mr. Vinchattel, anything from you? All right, at this time I will call the vote. Mr. Carley? Aye. Ms. Clinton?
Aye.
Ms. Hoyta?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ryan Graham votes aye. Policy number DK carries. The next item on the agenda will be date for board retreat. Ms. Clinton?
The board previously approved a board calendar, and it has a date on there of June 14th. I understand that it was just put in there as a placeholder, but we did formally approve that as a calendar. So I'd like to propose that we push the retreat into July or even August in order to accommodate onboarding our newest board member as well as board member availability. I asked you guys to have your calendars in mind. So we're looking for a full day. It's generally a 9 to 5. I suggest avoiding the same day as a board meeting. We did do them both back to back last year, but I think giving things due time for discussion, it would be better if we don't do it that way. So the question I have is if the board would prefer to hold the retreat the same week as a regular board meeting, but prior to the board meeting, so that if we do have discussion action items that come out of the retreat, we could add them to the agenda. If that's the case, then we would need to look at a Monday or Tuesday for the retreat. Or if we're not concerned about that so much, then those items would push to the next month, obviously, but we would then perhaps hold the retreat on, say, a Friday, the day after the board meeting. I do not have a preference, but that was kind of what I wanted to put out there for discussion.
I like the idea of doing the retreat on a Friday just because it's easier to clear schedule. So I'd put out there July 12th or August 9th, both Fridays that are after a board meeting. But I'm also open to finding other dates if other people prefer doing it before a board meeting.
My personal preference is a Friday as well, but I did want to have everybody think through those different decisions that we would need to make.
July 12th works for me.
we're going to, I did confirm, I asked Emily just for general availability, and she said the weeks of board meetings looked fine for her as well.
I think I'm good for the 12th.
Time, Ms. Clinton, would that retreat commence?
I'm going to say 9 o'clock. Yeah, let's say 9 o'clock. And then in the past, I've not given us an end point until I kind of know what all the other items are that we need to cover, but just plan for a full day.
And do we have a venue?
I was just reelected. I have not gotten there yet.
Okay.
I will get back to you.
Well, we could look at my conference room if needed. Do you want to make official motion?
I motion that we move the formally approved retreat date of June 14th to July 12th, starting at 9 a.m.
Second. Any discussion? Mr. Carley, how do you vote? Aye. Ms. Clinton?
Aye.
Ms. Hoyda?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ryan Graham votes aye. Thank you, Ms. Clinton. That will lead us to board comments, announcements. May 13th cafe chat with Craig Carley and Lindsay Clinton.
Yes, so we will have the final cafe chat for this school year on Monday from 9 to 10:30 a.m. at Serrano's, and I do have that posted on Parent Square, so if anyone would like to join us, they can RSVP. If you forget to RSVP, that's fine, just go ahead and show up. We'd love to chat with everyone.
Any further comments or announcements? Hearing none, I'll call for any new business. Outside of the Tuesday the 14th meeting next week, there would be nothing else at this point. We are adjourned, and we have no citizen comments not pertaining to agenda items, so we are dismissed. Thank you, everyone.